CATV, are we on?
Thumbs up.
Great.
My typing is very loud.
So we're rolling, right?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Hello, everyone. This is June 26th, so I'm believing it. June 26th, it's 7:30-ish. We're in Hanover, New Hampshire. It's the Select Board public meeting as regularly scheduled. And we are going to be, before we start off, a lot of the items on our agenda today, well, 3 actually, are going to be rescheduled. So even though it looks pretty bulky, it is still pretty bulky. I kind of just took back what I was about to start to say. It's a very bulky agenda. We're going to have a lot of fun and do good work for the town, as Peter always said. The first item on our agenda is public comment, and just public comment guidelines. It's our practice to provide an opportunity for public comment at the start of each meeting. Comments or questions should be directed to the chair and are limited to 5 minutes so that we can keep the meeting flowing. As I said, we have a big agenda. If your comment is on an agenda item, please do hold. It would be nice if you could hold that until the agenda item is taken up. Responses, if any, will be provided at the discretion of the chair. And is there anyone for public comment? David.
Hello, my name is David Vincelette. I live at 93 Lebanon Street in Hanover. I've lived there since 1984. I've been calling for over a year now, to the town manager. He has refused to answer my phone call. I'm not sure what that's about exactly, but I've let him know at these hearings that 6 members of the board and the town manager that hired him are criminals. And they hired him in order to cover their tracks from poisoning the town for 20 years with asphalt waste dumping and coal tar dumping, which the Department of Environmental Services discovered and made them stop. But the town and the college, who polluted the town waters, have still refused to admit what they did or to apologize. And this board has taken no effort to investigate what was done on our behalf. Now, the college and the town all wanted there to be a master plan so that we would be careful how Hanover was built up. And the first item on that master plan was to protect the quality of Hanover waters. Now, I bought my land in 1984, long before there was a hospital upstream, long before there was a asphalt waste dumping program with the college. So we had no reason to know that our water was going to be affected by what was going on. But I don't understand now, after all these years, why this board refuses to answer questions regarding poisoning of our children in violation of state and federal law. Now, I had land, we had land along the brook where we rented out rooms. My land was shut down. Not only did the town shut down my farm, but as soon as they took possession of the property, instead of letting me recoup the land by paying the back taxes, they bulldozed our farmhouse. And this has been the way the town has acted to me. They've taken 3 parcels after polluting McBrook, instead of allowing me to buy back the properties. Hanover bulldozed 6 buildings. They evicted 3 African Americans, 4 disabled people, 2 veterans, and several homeless people. Hanover put an illegal fence around our property, holding us in violation of our constitutional rights to travel for 25.5 months. There's been no effort by town officials to bring in state or federal investigators. The police department, the fire department, the highway department, the zoning department, all 100% white, None of them live in Hanover. Hanover polluted the only land owned by an African American in Hanover for 20 years till I got it stopped. Now, Hanover and Dartmouth have quit poisoning children for money with asphalt waste and coal tar, but they have yet to admit what they did, to answer questions, or to apologize for polluting sacred waters in violation of law. Last week was my 40th Dartmouth reunion. Some celebrated by baptizing our class president at Shantytown by our home on Mink Brook. Phyllis Utley performed the baptism in the water I have been fighting to protect for 39 years. It was only fitting that the ceremony was performed by a fellow 1984 graduate, but also a woman of color. She is a social advocate who has been fighting for racial justice in North Carolina. My calls to this board to look into state and federal crimes committed by 13 government officials have been silenced. And today I was found guilty of disorderly conduct for attempting to speak beyond 5 minutes about Hanover government criminal officials. The crimes remain, and so do 3 criminals who allowed us to be not only put into a concentration camp, but when I came here, walked here to try to get help, they refused to help us, even though I told them minority individuals, homeless people were being abused, had no water, no electricity, no fire lane in case of an emergency. Now it is time to face the ugly facts that Hanover and Dartmouth conspired to abuse human beings in violation of the law. Hanover's Selectboard continues to refuse to face the truth, making forgiveness impossible. The board has a duty to answer questions concerning legal violations by town officials. When will you start answering questions, sir?
David, we're reaching the end of your time. Would you be able to wrap up, please?
Sure. Could you answer the question?
David, I'm going to decline to answer that question right now. We've been through this. Is there anyone, pardon me, is there anyone else for public comment tonight? Great. So, Alex, could you help walk us through our next, we're going to move our next 3 public hearings to, well, the next one, let's just go one by one. The next item on the agenda is the public hearing to review and consider the proposed rate and fee schedule for fiscal year 2023-24. And the plan is to move that to July 4th.
24th.
24th, yeah.
Yeah.
July 4th, sure.
I was trying to figure out why you both jumped on me. I said July 4th, which is a holiday. That is correct.
Yes, so in the past, this has been usually done at this meeting, sort of the meeting right before the fiscal year changes. We just need another couple weeks to work out a couple more details. We didn't want to rush some of the numbers out. We're reviewing a few of the final numbers from a couple of the departments, and then we'll be prepared to get that all to you with a memo that hopefully summarizes some of the changes, so you don't have to pour through every cell of every spreadsheet, and then we'll have that ready for July 24th.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to, I don't know what the proper terminology is, but we're going to not do this agenda item right now. We're going to move the public hearing. We should actually get a motion to move it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
To
just
set-
figured that out on my own.
yes.
I figured it out. Is there a motion to move the hearing to the July 24th?
I would just, for some reason, my sense is we should use the word just set a public hearing rather than move it.
Thank
We're
you.
just creating a new public hearing.
Thank you.
I'm not sure it matters. But.
I believe we have
I move that we set a public hearing to review and consider proposed rate and fee schedule for FY 23-24 to July 24.
Is there a second?
Carrie, second.
Thank you. Before we, now we're going to be discussing our, I just thought of this right now, Alex, we're discussing our calendar for the summer.
Yes.
And we are definitely having a meeting on the 24th.
Well, that's a good question. So we were going to recommend if we wanted to cancel one meeting in each July and August to do the first one in July and the first one in August. Just, we looked at a couple schedules on staff and that seemed to work a little better. Not set in stone. But you're right, that we did have, I guess that's with the assumption that we're holding the July 24th meeting.
And that seems relatively reasonable to keep that meeting, so.
Okay.
Can everyone hear you
Yeah,
that?
so,
I think so.
Can you?
yes, I can,
Okay. That's
and I
5.
can't make the one on the 10th too, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
24th is great.
Yeah, 24th is great. All right, so there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Calling for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that passes unanimously. And the next item on the agenda is a public hearing to accept the Campion Rink drainage easement and to authorize the town manager to execute all necessary documents. And this, we are also setting, I'm trying to use the terminology you want me to use. Well, I'll just use the words. It's here, it's rescheduled.
Actually,
Yeah,
this is more complicated.
Yeah.
The next two?
Yeah, the next two, I don't know if I can get, I'm happy to give a little summary of the 4114, which is a little later, but
Right.
it seems a little more relevant now.
No,
Do you want me to run through
when
it
do
real
we
quick?
want to?
So we don't know
reschedule this
exactly yet because the timing, we have to have 3 meetings 2 weeks apart, exactly. So do you want me to just run through that?
Yes.
I'm getting a
Don't you
yes
think?
and a-
Athos?
Yeah, this is on our,
try
basically,
to-
we're going to take up agenda item number 10 right now,
So, yeah,
which I
Does it
think,
help us explain?
yeah, no, that's
3 and
reasonable.
4?
May we do that? Wait, let's skip to item number 10.
Great.
so at town meeting this year, one of the warrant articles that we approved was RSA 4114A, which allows the select board to participate in certain types of property transactions through a certain process. And that includes buying and selling property, giving and releasing easements as well. And so these next 2 items fall under the easement category. There is a process that we do have to go through, and this is different. There's another item on the agenda that I believe might be next, actually,
Yeah.
which is a gift to the Conservation Commission, which has a different statute under RSA 36A that does not have to follow the process that I'm about to outline. So this is just for the governing body, the select board, with this RSA in place. So the select board would consider the purchase or the easement, so that could just be an informal conversation, for example. And then what the select board we're recommending do is set 2 public hearing dates. That the 2 dates need to be no less than 10 and no more than 14 days apart. And those dates should be 2 months away. And I'll get to the reason why in a moment. So between that 2-month period of time, the select board then is required to refer the matter to the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board, which should review it and send a recommendation back before the first public hearing. So we can't have the first public hearing, we have to go through this all in a linear order. So we set the public hearing dates. That sort of starts the clock and gives a timeline to the Conservation Commission and Planning Board. There's 2 months then to review, so it's hopefully 1 meeting or 2 meetings time to review whatever is being sent to them. Then the Select Board gets that recommendation back. The Select Board is under no obligation from the state law, whether to act based on the recommendation or not. You can vote yes or vote no. Once that recommendation comes back, you have the first public hearing, discuss it. If the select board, although I'm not actually sure there's an option here, then you have to hold the second public hearing that you already set. Then at that point, if the select board is interested in moving forward, a 3rd meeting needs to be set no less than 7 and no more than 14 days later for some reason. And on that 3rd meeting, that is when the vote would happen to approve the property transaction or easement. Now, this is written in some sort of way, like this more complicated process in large part because the state is trying to prevent select boards from moving too quickly on large property transactions. But of course it applies to easements as well, which is a little more kind of business-like. So unfortunately it is the process we have to go through. And so basically because of the 7 to 14 day thing, really what we need to do is have 3 select board meetings exactly 2 weeks apart, which we won't have for a couple months. And so that's fine on our end. Some of these easements have been kicking around for a little while. We'd love to get them off and done, but also it's okay. And so if it's okay with all of you, what I would do is just Rob and I, or myself most likely, will follow up in a month or two when we have a sense of the schedules of the select board, when we know there's going to be 3,
Yep.
and then we'll try to time it right.
Okay,
You have a question.
just one second, Corey. So that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for going through that. I understand the spirit of the law, and it's just interesting that it was enacted in such a method. Any questions on the board?
Have the proponents, so Campion Rink, Dartmouth, are they all aware of this procedure, or we'll let them know after this meeting?
I think I will let them know. I don't know if they do know at this point.
Dartmouth is aware.
Okay.
HIS is right behind you.
Right.
Do you,
Great.
There's one more easement, it's the Pine Park pedestrian easement, that's also.
Was that in that group?
It was a separate, yeah.
So we can take that up at the same time, Rob?
okay.
Yeah.
That was previous.
So we'll figure out, we'll make
It wasn't
sure,
on this project.
it sounds like most folks know, but we'll make
Mentioned
sure to
last.
touch base and make sure everybody's aware.
Kari? Sorry, thank you.
Thank you for having so many interesting agenda topics tonight. I think I'm going to speak more than once. This is Kari Asmus. I live between Etna and Hanover Center. I spoke to this when you all had the pre-town meeting and suggested some verbiage for the warrant article that had 3 main things. One was notification of abutters. There was specification, and this outline doesn't mention when a group could bring a petition to send it to town meeting, and I would hope that, given how complicated this is, that perhaps you would revise it and make it very clear when that petition process could be put into place. And then the last thing that I had suggested was that the warrant article should stipulate that this doesn't prevent the select board from still taking things in front of town meeting, because this is so complicated that if it is February, you might be better off going to town meeting than going through these multiple meetings at a time when you're also trying to pass the budget, etc. So that's something I don't know if we heard anything more back on. In general, those 3 items, although the select board at that time thought that they were all reasonable, legal counsel did not like them. They just wanted it to be the stripped down version. So that's what was presented at town meeting. But I did get an email, from our town manager, and there was some verbiage in the annual report, that there could be, additional procedures. And I know that this is such already an incredibly complex thing, but I think that in particular, the notification of abutters, it's, even though it's very drawn out, we have people who go away for 2 months at a time. It's amazing how word cannot spread. And if something is happening, to the property that you abut, just as the planning board needs to notify abutters, I think that that's really a reasonable accommodation, and something that, we could ask.
Thank you, Kari. Joanne?
I don't disagree with some of your points, Kari, but in terms of easements, the easements have all gone through site plan review. The easements that we're reviewing, I can understand for land acquisition or land sales, but in terms of easements, I think that that's adding a huge amount of work to notify butters if they didn't get it the first time, in order for the easements to go through. It just feels.
These particular easements, I agree with
Yep.
you. You would be notifying Dartmouth, that you're granting them an easement or whatever. So these are not so much of a concern, but I could imagine that, what if the town was going to grant an easement for somebody to run a huge composting
Again, it would have to go through site plan review, but I think, I mean, I hear you and I think we should take it out, but in terms of, I think it makes sense to have the procedure in place in order, I think you make, I would say, yeah, let's put it on town meeting, we'll vote instead of having these hearings, right? And I think if we're buying or selling large parcels of land, that we should notify the abutters.
Yeah, well, that, again, I think that on so many things, it's also just knowing what to expect. So if you as the select board say, we're not gonna do this on easements because it goes through this, but we will do it for sale and acquisition, I think that would be somewhat more, protection for, a property owner. So I appreciate your consideration, and those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, Karen. All right, so that really takes care of, are we done with that, item 10? I think we basically are.
Yeah,
Okay,
and we'll
thank
come
you.
back, it'll be a month or two, but we'll come back, yeah.
Okay, so we're going back to 3 and 4, which I'm going to take together, and we are going to delay both of them. I haven't read what 4 is, but it is a set of another easements with respect to our relationship with Dartmouth and many projects that have have been undertaken over the years. I think one of them is 13 years old, if I'm not correct. I may be incorrect, sorry about that. So we're gonna...
It's old.
Yeah, it's old, regardless. We're gonna move those aside. I'm trying not to use the word table because we're not tabling them. Public hearing, so we're going to item number 5, which is a public hearing to accept Balch Conservation Area property on behalf of the Hanover Conservation Commission to accept the donation from the Balch Foundation in the amount of $50,000 to fund maintenance and upkeep of conservation lands in Hanover, and to authorize the town manager to accept and or execute all necessary documents. We've discussed this before. This is a very important tract of land up in the Moose Mountain area, and the important thing about this is that the town is being gifted $50,000 as I said to upkeep and maintain those lands, which is an important aspect to keep that open to the public and useful conservation area.
Is anyone here to speak on it?
Yeah, we should have a motion in a second first before we...
And can I ask a question about the motion? I just want to make the language slightly different than what's listed on the agenda, which is just to, I'm not sure if there's perfect language. The on behalf of might make it sound, I'm not sure it does change anything because there's a statutory process that the Conservation Commission accepts property under, but just in case we're not accepting, because then we have to go through that whole thing we just went through, but the Conservation Commission is accepting, so the language that I had very open to anything is like, instead of on behalf of, in partnership with, in collaboration with, that the select board does by statute have to approve it.
Yes.
But we're not accepting it instead of the Conservation Commission. And so I just wanted to, I don't know if we have
understood. And really the implication of this is that the funds are going to which particular fund? It is the conservation.
Yeah.
I forgot the exact name of that fund. The conservation fund, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact name of it, but
It's probably specific to BOM in the conservation fund. Carrie?
And this language also accepts the property itself, the first part of this.
Yes.
yeah. What we could also do is, if we said on public hearing to accept the Balch Conservation Area property on behalf of the Hanover Conservation Commission, basically pursuant to RSA 36A, I think that would meet, from my perspective, that would make it clear that that's the statute that we're accepting it under, and that it's through the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
So if we just put pursuant to RSA 36A in there.
And that RSA describes, you don't have it in front of you either.
I can pull it up. It's the process, it's the statute that governs conservation commissions.
Okay. Okay.
Just to make sure that that's the one that we're doing, not the 4114.
Okay, so to address what Carrie just said, so this motion, which has not been made yet, is to accept the property to the Conservation Commission, basically, and the funding to go to the Conservation Commission fund.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to specify where it goes. I think that's fine. I just want to make sure that it's clear in the motion that this is a gift to the Conservation Commission.
Okay. Do we have a motion along those lines?
Carrie's gonna make it.
I move to, pursuant to RSA 36A, I move with much gratitude to accept the Bound Conservation Area property in collaboration with the Hanover Conservation Commission, and to further accept a donation from the Bound Foundation in the amount of $50,000 to fund maintenance and upkeep of conservation lands in Hanover, and to authorize the town manager to accept and or execute all necessary documents. Period.
Thank you, Carrie.
So second?
So we have a motion and a second. Any, board, any more discussion? Any discussion before we open it to the public?
Rob has some.
Rob?
Can I invite you up with the chair of the
Absolutely.
Conservation Commission?
Absolutely, Rob. Thank you.
Thank you. So the town of Hanover's planning department has been working on this for about 4 months. I should point out that this property was originally acquired by the town and then transferred to the Bombs as a conservation angel to protect it. Jim Baum has passed away. His wife is in the process of cleaning up the estate, and felt the best owner and steward of this land going forward would be the Town Conservation Commission. In our discussion, we proposed a gift to the town that would enable us to continue to maintain the parking lot and trail system out there. And they were very supportive of this ask and provided that donation. So the Conservation Commission will take this up as a public hearing on their next regular agenda. The Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, excuse me, is required to approve the acceptance by statute.
So just to make sure that's the language that we're accepting it, and you're approving that.
I think it's pretty clear.
Okay.
Well,
And
we'll make it clear.
Very good. And that the funds, I believe, are going into the conservation fund.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And wish there were some bombs here to thank.
I will continue to extend the
When
town's
it's now.
gratitude.
That's a lot. Yes.
It's a beautiful property
It is.
Thank you for working on
on the
that.
Thank
backside
you.
of Moose.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Any other public input on this? I think this is wonderful. It's absolutely amazing. It is an amazing property, and the town is forever appreciative. Without any further discussion, I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor of the motion as stated? Aye. Opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And now so this is
Number 6.
so I have to open a public hearing, excuse me? Or is this just, okay.
Yeah, I believe that's the way we had it set up. We
Yeah.
needed a public hearing for
So item number 6 on our agenda is I'd like to open a public hearing to discuss and adopt a Town Vision Zero plan. This was described to us in our packet, and it looks like Rob is setting up good. So I wasn't. Hi, Scott. How are you?
Scott Drive Sidewalk.
Thank you.
Sidewalk Easement.
Just to remind everyone that this was brought to us about a year ago by the Bike Walk Committee to discuss the Vision Zero. So, but I won't steal your thunder story, Scott. But we have seen it. This is the second time.
Yes, and we hope that you might adopt it tonight. It's interesting timing, because today's Washington Examiner has a article, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg thinks it's possible to eliminate all vehicular fatalities and even serious accidents in America. He's embraced the program and philosophical approach to traffic that began in Sweden called Vision Zero. His cabinet department is spreading funds around the state and local departments of transportation that embrace this concept. So it's timely. You've read it, so you know what it basically is. Vision Zero in the United States, there's a plan in 2023, New Hampshire, 22 through 26, driving towards zero. And there's little green dots that you can't see on here of all the cities and towns that have adopted these, New York and various other things. I'll summarize what the difference between the traditional approach and Vision Zero approach is. Traditional approaches, traffic deaths says they're inevitable, you're going to have them. Vision Zero says they should be preventable. Traditional approach says it's individuals who are responsible for it, and we need to perfect human behavior. Vision Zero says, well, humans are going to fail, so plan for it. And design systems where even if humans fail, people don't die, or have less chance of dying. So try and design safer systems, instead of trying to prevent all collisions, prevent the fatal and severe crashes in particular. So that's the approach. The reason it's needed now particularly is if you look at that's 1980, if you can't read it on the left side, and 2022 on the right, it's a graph of pedestrian fatalities. They went down and were way down in 2010, and they've gone up, and they've really gone up since the COVID hit. So it's a good time to be trying to improve this. Yes?
Is there, that's a huge difference. Is there general, are there general theories about what's happening?
You know, why it went down by 50%, it's back up now. There are a number of theories on that. One of which is we have more SUVs and large cars and high bumpers. And when a pedestrian gets hit by an SUV, they're much more likely to get killed than if they're hit by a smaller car. Speed is another problem. I think if you're hit at 20 miles an hour, you've got like I have to look at exactly what the number is, but something like an 85% chance of surviving. If you're hit at 30 miles an hour, it goes down to like 20%. I don't have the exact numbers, and I can come up with them if you need them, but those are the ideas. So speed is a question. And in particular, the places that our town currently doesn't match what our Vision Zero statement is on speed on arterials and connectors, speed limits in neighborhoods, and providing complete streets so bike, cyclists, and pedestrians can use the street safely. So basically, I can go through a bunch of things here. Canada's doing better. Rural things are more dangerous than urban things, but basically...
Maybe go back to that country slide just for a sec, before Canada.
Canada?
Before that one.
Sure.
Yeah, just that United States is kind of the exception here, and
most countries are really going down on roadway deaths. Lithuania and Latvia really improved, but U.S. is dipped and it's now going on its way back up. So that's a reason for being concerned about it. Thank you. I'm trying to not take too much time, but urban roads are safer than rural roads is what that basically says. Or at least they have fewer deaths, and probably because they have slower speeds. That's a big piece of it. And the good news, as is pointed out in the article, is there's $5 billion in federal funding over the next 5 years. If this Vision Zero statement is adopted, Hanover has a much better chance of competing for some of that money. And their first grant applications is due July 10th at 5 p.m. So again, it's a timely time to do this. So thank you for your time and consideration, and if you have more questions, other than Alex, you have one, so it's going along. You have to answer.
So Scott,
yes.
Thank you for your presentation. what does this, what are the obligations of the town if this is approved? I'm trying to find your page while I'm speaking, so I apologize. But what are the specifics that we are signing up for?
You're trying to find your version of it and trying to find my version of the draft. It's
right here.
So basically committing to try and take this safe systems approach, to consider
People first.
how to design things so that even if people mess up, fewer people die. That the streets are safer. Part of that would be complete streets, as I mentioned, but that's another discussion. We have a complete streets policy already. It's basically saying that Hanover is going to try and meet the sorts of design things that are there. It's not a ironclad commitment that you will in all cases do something, but it's a statement that this is the direction Hanover wants to go in, and this is what we think the town's philosophy in designing roads, complete streets, speed limits should be, and that's basically what we're committing to.
Scott, is there are there any financial implications that, excuse me to say it out loud, a pedestrian dies? We have adopted this as our vision, but the pedestrian dies. Is there an implied liability on our part because we didn't do something early enough or aggressively enough?
I'm not a lawyer. I really have no...
That's a good answer.
That's a good
There's
answer.
liability. Somebody can sue the town for anything, basically. And I won't guarantee that nobody's going to say that Hanover's wanted to do Vision Zero and didn't live up to what it is. And if there's a lawyer here who can answer it, town lawyer or something, I will defer that to them. I don't think that there's... They can, if a pedestrian dies now and they say it's because the street's unsafe, you can get sued.
Yes, you can.
If we simply say we're committing to try and make the street safer, and a pedestrian dies because the street hasn't been fixed yet, I don't think there's any more, I wouldn't see why there'd be more liability. But again, I'm not a lawyer.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Oh, and so this needs to be adopted in order to be able to apply for the grant, which is due. Is that correct, Scott?
I'm not certain it has to be adopted, but it certainly would help.
This one, for this particular grant, it has to be. For other grants, it just makes us more competitive.
Right, but this particular one, that's a...
Yeah, they're not interested in giving money to locales that have not adopted a Vision Zero statement.
And what is the grant that we're applying for?
Safe streets for all.
So that's the supplementary material we got. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Rob.
Sorry for interrupting. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I appreciate it.
I can't remember who was first. Joanna?
I just want to, I mean, the town has been committed to this thinking for a long time. I think this feels like I've always felt, at least certainly serving on the bike walk committee and now as select board, that we've often tried to put pedestrians first, bikes, transit, auto, as we look at things. And I think this articulates kind of the philosophy that we followed for many years. And I think that if this is a way to help fund, to apply for money, to make us more competitive, to get funding to improve walking and biking in town, I think it's a great idea. And I think we've taken steps through our planning process for biking and walking. And I also think Jenny, bringing the 25 mile an hour on unmarked streets, we approved that earlier this year. This year? Yeah. It was
Recently.
It was recently. I don't know. It's all kind of a blur.
Within the last year or two.
Within the past year or so. I think that, you know, I'm supportive of this.
Nancy, I'm sorry, there was somebody over here with their hand up, was it? Oh, was it?
Okay. So, it sounds like we're already on the way toward implementing this. There's some language here that says by 2025, the town of Hanover municipal budget will include.
That's the Hanover Bike Walk Plan. This
Okay.
is the Vision Zero statement.
Okay, statement,
So
all right, gotcha.
that's later on in the
That
agenda.
presentation comes next.
Never mind, okay, all right, yes.
Thank you.
Hold that.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I
Scott,
guess,
yes.
I guess I'd only add that it's, I mean, there's a lot of stuff about it right now because Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg just spoke about it and,
Well, that's better.
why, yeah. There, maybe it's not working.
I think we can hear you.
Can you?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know, I've gotten complaints. But it's one of the tools that we have is to use a safe systems approach and do that consistently with the best practices that we've learned across the globe as well as in our own country now. So it's,
Just interested, how, I'm nothing, I'm all for this, but I'm just curious, and I looked at their website, trying to figure out and I understand how they've set themselves up. Are they competing? Is there like a lot of competition in this area? Or, meaning, are there other such vision groups? How did we pick this one is really what I'm asking, because they have funding, it sounds like.
no, there's not another like vision, there's not another competing thing for zero. I mean, I think if we flip back to your first slide, the very first slide, and this is the way the U.S. Department of Transportation frames it, is that our goal is Vision Zero, which is 0 fatalities, and it also includes 0 severe injuries. But the way we get there is through a safe systems approach. So Vision Zero really is, are you committing to designing your town so that we would anticipate 0 fatalities and severe injuries?
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But who are they?
It's not a,
It's DOT.
It is?
It's the
well,
US
now it's
Department of
US
Transportation.
DOT.
Because it looked like,
but
I mean, their board looked pretty private.
globally, there's are different Vision Zero groups that have sprung up. And there's a Vision Zero that sprung up, you know, in the Netherlands and
Okay.
Sweden.
All right.
But there's not, like, we're not joining a group. We can, on that map, we can decide to be a Vision Zero municipality and put ourselves on a map and pay a membership due, but that's not what is at stake today. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
You're right, it's not, I mean, it's not Department of Transportation.
It's not, it's a private group,
It's,
funded by private corporations, which is great. I mean, money is great. To do things we want to do that Rob has planned is wonderful. Money is great. I can't believe I just said that.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. I just wanted to make clear that it's not a government program.
You're right.
The US DOT has made a Vision Zero statement, and yeah, and they've asked other people to make this
Got it.
statement.
Got it.
So,
Okay. I can't remember. Do we, Kari, I'm sorry. You've been patiently waiting. I apologize.
Kari Yasmus, and I think it is customary for the board to have its whole discussion before opening it up to the public. So sorry, I did not hear the first, the discussion of this before. But when I was reading through this, and of course I am coming from a more rural lens, and it, you know.
You mean Etna, Hanover Center?
Yes, that, which is more rural than I think, than maybe what's some other, but Carriage Lane might also qualify. But one of the things that just caught my ear now is that urban roads are safer than rural roads. But I think that a lot of what we read at, we're reading, we see maps of in-town, the presentation we had a couple of weeks ago sort of seemed like the town ended after Etna, et cetera. So all of those things always kind of, make my ears pick up. And in this document in particular, the second point under Vision Zero, Hanover looks behind the statistics at. The second one was the dangers created by busy high-speed roads in the heart of our town. And, I would like that to say, and rural countryside. I cannot tell you, but I think others could, of some of the dangerous situations that exist with speeds, in excess of 50 miles per hour in, so I would like that to say, and rural countryside. And then in general, like on the last point there, the fourth, the impact of speeding on neighborhood streets. Where I live, we don't have streets, we have roads. Some of them are paved, some of them are unpaved. And I know that it's not really feasible to every time we say street, to say street and road. But in a key document like this, to only use the word street, it kind of has a very settled bias or suggests a focus that I'm not even sure exists. So if that last point could say the impact of speeding on neighborhoods, roads and streets, those of us who live in rural Hanover also consider our little parts of town to be neighborhoods. They're just a little bit configured in a different way. So I just feel that those two changes kind of puts a little different emphasis and adds a reminder here and there that this would be for all of town.
Scott, is that agreeable to you? It sounds quite reasonable. Yeah, I assumed a lot of this was kind of grabbed from their materials, which is very extensive. I'll look through their website. Thank you.
I think the statistics, one of the problems with the statistics on rural roads is unless you look, which is why we have the second point where we have to look beyond the statistics here in Hanover and we have to look across the country, is because you have this problem with small numbers. And particularly when you're looking at deaths and fatalities, like fatalities and severe injuries, you're not necessarily going to pick up the problem areas, and you're not going to, if we're evaluating Hanover statistics, we're not going to be able to address the problems. We need to be looking at the road configurations and what we know about them from the entire country, not just Hanover.
Yeah.
So if you look at the document, it's written so that we look at the statistics in Hanover first, and then we also look at the safe systems approach, and that's where we talk about the rural roads. And that's why it was written that way, because if you say we're only going to look at where we have identified problems, we're never going to fix your roads.
No, I understand that, and I do think in the fourth paragraph where it says, while only 19% of the U.S. population lives in rural areas, 43 of all roadway fatalities occur on rural roads.
Yeah.
And that's definitely a nod to the national statistics that may apply here, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe it did apply here. So I appreciate that. It was just a little further down of being a little bit more inclusive in our language.
Yeah, I now that I look at this more carefully, I see what you're saying, Jenny. This is
the question
Yeah, I know.
is how best to take this very problem that you're mentioning seriously. That's the question.
I mean, given that you have the language up there, you can see that the intent is to highlight the problem on rural roads. And certainly, there's a lot of great data collected back in the early 90s, and it was so fascinating. You might think that the most or incidents with pedestrians is where there are a lot of pedestrians, but in fact, drivers sort of become more alert when there are a lot of pedestrians. And it's when you get into areas where the driver is not really thinking, oh, I need to be watching for a pedestrian, I need to be watching, that is where they can let their guns guard and you have more problems. And again, it's just, I think that in all of our documents, to the extent that we remind ourselves, that we have different things going on.
Can I interrupt you? Because I don't think we're going to be adopting this document as written as our dogma. Scott, what are you asking us to adopt? You're asking us to, can you come up, please, Scott?
Yeah, basically to approve this.
Scott, can you come to the microphone?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought it was this statement that you were going to approve, but I'm sorry if it's not.
That's my understanding too, is you're being asked to approve that statement.
This statement?
This statement.
Okay.
And,
So, I mean, we could, for example, modify the second bullet and just get rid of the dangers
get rid
created
of
by
the middle
busy,
part of the
high-speed
yeah.
roads in our
Period.
town.
Yeah.
in our town.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Get the heart of, yes.
And we could get rid of streets and just say neighborhoods, or something like that, I mean, I think.
That's
Yes.
exactly what I
Yeah,
was
on
thinking.
neighborhoods, that's true.
We just might want to clarify that the statistics is for Hanover and beyond, because otherwise we will get into a problem where these won't get fixed.
So change the bullet, excuse me, the bold, Scott,
Yep.
to say, why don't you just get rid of the word Hanover?
You mean in the bold?
Yeah. Or I'm not wedded to that, whatever.
I'm not wedded to, what I like is to have this basic statement there, and it changes like dropping high-speed road in the heart of town. We want to deal with high-speed roads every place.
Right.
Okay, so let's,
I'm happy to have that dropped.
okay.
I'm also happy to
Just
high impact of speeding in neighborhoods.
Or on neighborhoods that limit access.
Except
Yeah.
in
And
neighborhoods.
then change the bold, as Jenny said, to look behind the statistics in Hanover and beyond.
I'm not sure the bold has to be changed, of course you're thinking.
I think that's just the name of our statement, like we put our town after the name of Vision Zero.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. That I didn't hear.
That's the name of our statement is Vision Zero Hanover.
Okay, fine. No,
So that's what this statement is.
Yeah.
But getting rid of the in the heart of our town and in the fourth bullet, speeding in neighborhoods that can limit access, mobility, and everything else. Those changes. Thank you.
That work?
Asking those.
Is that good? I'm looking at you, Kari.
Oh, me,
Is that-
yes, I thought you were gonna look at, yeah, no, that's.
I just made changes. Did you get those changes?
did not.
What are you doing
But I
over
did.
there? You should be
I'm
getting
just
these
making
changes,
noise.
Alex. Come
We can get that off the video easy.
I think we have changes.
We've got it documented.
So
So is there a motion?
I would make a motion that the select board adopt the Vision Zero Hanover, that we adopt Vision Zero Hanover as slightly modified, so we're inclusive of the dangers created by busy high-speed roads in our town, and that the impact of speeding on neighborhoods that can limit access, those two changes.
Great.
This two-page document.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, there's 3 seconds. I love it. Jenny seconded it for the record. Okay. I think we've had a lot of discussion. Is there any further discussion, board? Great. Let's call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Here we are, back to public hearings and setting them. Sure. Go ahead, Nancy.
I'd like to move that we set a public hearing for Monday, July 24, 2023, to accept unanticipated funds in the amount of $16,825 from the New Hampshire Office of Highway Safety to replace 3 radar systems and police overtime patrols, and to authorize the town manager to execute all necessary documents.
So,
I'll second that.
thank you. So we are stacking up
Yes, the 24th.
the 24th, which is great. It'll be a nice day in the middle of the 24th. Any further discussion on this? I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
And we have set another public hearing. So we have, I believe we have Scott coming back up for a presentation by Hanover Bike Walk Committee. Ray, the Hanover Bike Walk plan. Oh,
Patrick, the chair.
My name is Patrick Lugo. I'm going to cover this one.
Okay.
Why don't I dive right in? Thank you all for having us to present the walk bike plan tonight. This is something that the Bike Walk Committee has been working on for the past couple of years, I think, is reasonable to say. It's a long plan. I'm not going to go through all the details right now. I think it's 193 pages. But we've got a good executive summary. We've got a good website that summarizes it. And I'm here, and we have many representatives of the committee here as well. And this slide is just a nice overall summary, introductory slide that I think the plan itself represents a commitment to think about these issues related to the issues we were just talking about with the Vision Zero statement as we go forward into the future and create a community that's really supportive of the things we all want. So I just wanted to spend a couple minutes on why we're doing this. The walk bike plan is at its simplest an update to the 2012 walk bike plan that was approved by the Selectboard a decade plus ago. It's a very thorough update. We've gone through and highlighted a bunch of things, and I think incorporated the latest thinking on a lot of these issues. But beyond that, the vision is really a Hanover where walking and biking is safe, welcoming, convenient, all around Hanover for people of all ages and abilities. I think that's easy to dismiss, but it's really important because somebody might feel comfortable biking on our streets or walking one pathway, but it might not work for everyone else. And just to follow up with the remaining points here, to achieve those goals, we want to think about a network, what that means, how do we incorporate it, and how do we ultimately implement it and engage with the community. And then I'll just spend a minute to tie it to the sustainability master plan. The master plan mentions that transportation represents about 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions in the state of New Hampshire. The master plan in chapter 6, its first recommendation is to adopt this bike walk plan. I think it's recognized that it's probably not the best fit to include 193 pages of really detailed information in the master plan itself. So we've separated that and spent a lot of time working on it. And I would note the second recommendation in the master plan is to adopt the Vision Zero statement. So we're making good progress.
We haven't even adopted the plan yet, or finished it for that matter.
I just want to mention that the plan itself is at this URL on the website. I really recommend this as the best way to access it. It's very user friendly. And I'll go through some of the items entailed there in the next few minutes. So we spent all this time developing the plan, and then we realized it was a lot. So we developed an executive summary. And I just want to spend a couple minutes going through some of the points from the executive summary. I think this is also a good point to mention that not only has the plan been reviewed by all the members of the Bike Walk Committee, but we did have an external consultant, Carolyn Radish at GPI, review it, make some recommendations that were incorporated. One of her recommendations, one of the more substantial ones I would say, was develop a set of goals and targets and tie the different elements of that plan to these goals and targets. So we highlight that pretty prominently in the executive summary. And maybe I'll just walk through the goals because they're pretty simple, but we want to make a significant shift in the amount of everyday trips to walking and biking as a sustainable mode of transportation. And then the following two sort of enable that: create a walk-bike network that's safe for all users of all ages and all abilities, and innovate to be an early adopter of best practices in both the network operation and the infrastructure that we have. And then moving to the right of this, We've identified a number of targets. I won't read through all of them, but maybe I'll highlight a couple ones here. The first two are related to trips and commutes. That distinction wasn't obvious to me, so maybe I'll mention it. Commute is the primary mode that folks use to get to work. And trips are sort of a smaller errand, or going from even the grocery store to the coffee shop, that you can have many trips for a single event. So trips tend to be easier, I would say, just because there's so many of them. So we've highlighted a couple numbers here. The second one I think is really important to highlight. We're targeting the percent of walking commutes returning to 45% by 2030. If you look at the data, this is from the American Communities Survey, so it's not perfect, but I think it's a good data set. We've declined since we adopted that prior plan from 45% to the low 30s. I can't tell you the reasons for that. I can speculate on some of them, but it's been a notable decline, I think statistically significant. So part of this plan is trying to get back to that level and going further beyond that. And then I'll highlight a couple too at the bottom here. I think it's really important to develop a capital plan for bike walk facilities in the town. One of the things I've run into in my time on the bike walk committee is we get presented with these opportunities and we're sort of trying to react really quickly because we don't have a really clear plan of what we want to do when we get money or something like that. So having a long-term plan that's relatively specific that we can check off as we go forward and really focus on implementing. And then the last piece is dedicating some amount of the town's budget to these items. We thought it was important to include this as a target. I think we wanted to give the select board and the town some flexibility in what that target is, so we didn't quantify that here. But I think that's an important metric of our commitment to these sort of things going forward. This is just a screenshot of the website. I've sort of walked through the first two chapters already. I'll just mention what's contained within chapters 2 and 3. The approach is sort of general guidelines, how we want to think about getting around in our community. There's some great maps and charts in that that I would definitely recommend highlighting. And we go from that more general, how do we think about this as a concept, to getting more specific in the plan area. And that's the chapter. Some of this is in the executive summary as well, but we have a number of great maps on like what's a 20-minute radius from key areas in the town, how many folks are walking, how many folks are biking. I think we're really trying to focus in on the issues of Hanover. And then we go specifically into recommendations for walking in town and biking to town. And then going on from that, the website includes specific recommendations for different areas of town. And I think we really want to recognize that different areas have different constraints, different needs, and different users. So we go spot by spot and try to identify some of the things that we think are important to address going forward. And then I think I'll start to wrap it up here, but the action plan is another really important piece. We spent all this time developing this plan, but we don't want it to just be an essay that we approve and set off to the side. We want it to be really thoughtful about actually implementing those recommendations. So we separated the action plan into these 3 areas: policies, practices, and performance indicators. This is a screenshot of the policies section of the executive summary. We're making good progress because we already adopted the 25-mile-an-hour prima facie speed limit, and then just tonight we were talking about the Vision Zero statement. So we're working on that. This includes several other policies. I don't think our intent here is for the select board to de facto adopt these policies by adopting the plan, but I think we are providing recommendations as these these are things we should consider going forward. So we have things like the complete street guidance, developing a sidewalk inventory, establishing a sidewalk fund. These are just examples of recommendations we've made in the plan. Practices include, we've separated them into 3 subcategories, O&M. These are things like sidewalk operations and maintenance, maintaining bike facilities. You could include some demonstration projects in that. Capital improvements, which would be bigger projects, and then the third category is engagement. So tracking progress, engaging residents of the town to understand what they're looking for. Hosting events is one thing that Hanover Bike Walk does already today to try to get folks engaged. I think we do a pretty good job of including young kids and students and older folks, and I think we'd like to see that continue. And then the last one is performance indicators. I've sort of alluded to this already, but we have okay data. Hanover Bike Walk tries to collect some data. The police are great in providing us a good amount of data, but I think there's more work to be done in terms of not only measuring the amount of walkers and bikers, but how successful we are in planning for the future we want, talking about some of these infrastructure targets, funding metrics, things like that. So maybe I'll wrap it up here. We have a couple slides later on in the presentation. There's one that's maybe worth highlighting is I think having this plan is it's a good step towards applying to the funding programs that we were talking about earlier. But also the funding programs are a good way to achieve the goals in these plans. This is not like Hanover needs to do all this on its own. The federal government, in the Safe Streets for All program, they have $5 billion, but there's all sorts of other programs that the government's willing to help out with. So I think I'll pause there and open to any questions.
Actually, one thing I should have done at the beginning is, could you introduce, or could the members of the Bike Walk Committee identify themselves with just raising your hands? How many folks do we have here? It's a wonderful turnout, thank you.
Thank you.
And I know you've been working on this for a long time. Pardon me. And it's quite a formidable effort and document concept that you've come up with. So
Well, we didn't come up with it, just to be clear. I think Scott, maybe you came up with it. There was a plan previously that the select board adopted about a decade ago.
Yeah,
and so it was time to update it. So.
I participated in that old
Yeah, there's some of
document.
us like Bill and I who've been there from the beginning, but this one is an update of it, and it's a substantial update, and Katie's put a lot of work in it.
It is. And there's a lot here, which is, so what you folks are,
It's just a presentation.
it's just a presentation, thank you. And it's wonderfully done. I appreciate everything in it. Just a couple of random questions, and I'm looking at your executive summary. I don't know why I'm losing my voice, I apologize. When we say, for example, that by 2040, all streets in the urban compact will be walk and bike friendly, is the concept, that doesn't mean that every street is going to have a sidewalk, I assume. It means that every street is going to be, the concept of the street is going to take walking and biking into consideration in their design. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's a great characterization. We're not trying to prescribe solutions in this. These are broader targets about what we want to achieve.
And really I see one of the biggest changes in this plan is what you highlighted earlier, which is the discussion about the capital plan. And we are developing a capital improvement project committee, and I assume that would be on the radar of that committee.
Is that right, Alex?
Yeah, I apologize, I threw that out of nowhere. The capital improvement program committee, which I forgot the exact name of.
Right.
This would, the bike walk plan would be part of the purview or scope of that committee, I assume.
Yeah, I think that I mean, this and the complete streets and other things that provide guidance on both sort of a macro level. So the more long-term would be part of like the capital improvement plan committee, and maybe on a more micro level might be part of the staff working group where we review some of the complaints and issues that come in. So that's one of the questions I kind of actually was noting down here, which is how to make sure that whatever we're doing here is connected to all those different points. And I'm sure Rob and I will be chatting about that with our public works and police on Wednesday when we meet a little bit more, but that these all provide guidance in those spaces.
Okay, okay. Nancy?
One thing that I'm struck by is the fact that the education of motorists is extremely key, because and especially if you're going to create more sidewalks, because a sidewalk only means that obviously our pedestrians are safe, but there are more opportunities with a wider sidewalk to move the bicycles even closer to motorists. And if the motorists aren't alert to the fact that all of these bikes are coming closer to them and they need to pay attention, then we're, in an increasingly challenging situation. I don't have a solution, but I do see it as an important step.
I think that's an
And
example.
it also means motorists beyond Hanover. People using Hanover as a cut-through, and oops, in order to get to my job at DHMC, and I live in Vershire, I'm going to have to adopt a different way of thinking when I cut through Hanover.
I think that's what, Nancy, I think the concept of the complete streets incorporates that different,
Yeah.
as I understand it.
Complete streets are very expensive and very difficult to establish. I think that it's a lot easier, a lot faster to educate motorists before we move all of that concrete.
It's not obvious to me that educating motorists with words is effective. I think the infrastructure and the signals you get around you on the environment, how fast you should be going, what you should be paying attention to, are really critical.
And let's get our employers involved. Let's get the administration at DH, the college, the folks at Hypertherm. Maybe all of a sudden they're heading to Hypertherm down 120 and their bicycles on 120 where they haven't been before.
I read them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really good overarching point behind the plan and complete streets guidance and all these things we're talking about is cars are interacting with pedestrians, are interacting with bikes, are interacting with scooters. We want everyone to be safe, and I think the overarching theme that I would present to you today is we want to be proactively thinking about that.
Yep. And that's greatly appreciated, and this really is a formidable piece of work that you've done. Further discussion? Yeah, I'm sorry, you had your hand up first. No?
Laura should go first. Your hand was up first. I concur.
Laura Acker. I just wanted to say, I'm wondering how many of you saw our cone presentation that we did on Sand Hill a couple weeks ago?
It was great.
As far as like educating and not necessarily using words, but using demonstrations. I myself have heard a lot from my neighbors about how they think a lot more now as they go up that hill, and just having the cones and that visual for them. My own daughter, when I was driving the other day, told me that I just took myself out because I was too close, in the corner. And so even me, who I try to be, I'm trying to be a new biker. And so I think education and things like that, where people like really have to see something in order for it to take effect. I notice that every time I come into town, I see the signs that have the green on them that say no bikes or scooters on the sidewalks. Although I was in town the other day and I was shocked at how many bikers, actually not bikers, scooters, or were actually on the sidewalk. I'm not sure how you enforce that, but I think it should be enforced, because first I saw some kids going by on the road, and I was actually super impressed, and then all of a sudden it was like bam, 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 all these people. I was a little bit shocked, and it wasn't just Dartmouth students. I know a lot of people like to blame the Dartmouth. It's not just Dartmouth students, but also I think that the 25-mile-per-hour signs that we have that we're supposed to have the green on them should have the green on them, because I don't notice that ever, but I always notice the green that's when I drive into Lebanon they have, and then on those. That's just a.
Thank you, those are great points. Bill?
Thanks, Patrick, for the really clear presentation. My name is Bill Young, and I'm a member of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee. Just a couple of suggestions. The Bike and Walk Committee has had great support from town departments, Rob Hausman, the Department of Public Works, Peter Kavaki, Police, James Martin, and others. But I find that we're struggling communicating with the college. We have great help from Joanna with the planning side of things, but I just really, over the years, have struggled connecting with safety and security. So my request would be, as you go forward with this plan, that because over half of the citizens of this community are students, and they change year to year by the thousands, really do whatever you can to get safety and security into our planners are great. I really have not found that we have a consistent message and consistent ear in the college from that point of view. When Laura says we need to sort of how do we educate students, it's not all and so forth. We can do it, we just need to sort of work at it a little bit better. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. That's awesome. Further discussion? Okay.
The suggestions here, what's the mechanism?
Yeah, I was going to talk about that or really discuss that as well. Well, first of all, just my recollection of the older plan, which I do recall being quite a nice piece of work as well.
Also long.
Yes, it was long. And it was nicely written up too. I'm just trying to remember it. But I digress, I apologize. What we did with that plan was to, as Ben alluded to, incorporate it into future planning when efforts were being made at a public works level in particular. And it was very helpful, I believe, for Peter Klobacki in particular with regards to reformatting roads along the way. But this is a bigger target, a bigger scope than that last one was, as I recall. And that is an excellent question. Joanna?
So when we did I served on that prior to being on the select board and was very involved in it. The town's master plan had been adopted in 2003.
Yep.
It was not, there was no sign that it was going to be brought, updated in 2011 or 2012. And so we came to the select board, and we actually did present to the planning board and asked the select board to consider this as, an official document, because there was no site for an updated master plan at that time. We're in the throes of updating our sustainability master plan, and as Patrick said, it's already referenced in the draft documentation, in the draft chapters of the plan, and I think that this should be rolled into the plan as a really important. I know it's 190 pages, but the backup material or the appendices of the master plan, the sustainability master plan, are abundant and hugely valuable for our staff and for our community. And so I think, what to do with this is, that's one way of dealing with it, and in adopting it. And I think that there are, having read it, there's all kinds of land use implications for this.
All kinds
because
of what?
Land use
Land use.
implications, you know, as the planning board creates our land use policies, develops our land use policies and our laws, it feels like a lot of this stuff not only is DPW because it's highways, but it's, you know, where are their trails, where's their infrastructure for places for people to sit, for people to go from place to place, maybe on the road, it may be off-road, you know, as we look at Girl Brook, et cetera, et cetera. So
The sitting came up a bit actually with people with disabilities often cannot take simple trips because they don't know if they'll need to take a break and have a seat. So that has come up a lot in our conversations with, you know, the folks at Access Dartmouth, and there are other disability groups around town. And just like that need to have, you know, benches available, it's something that we wouldn't necessarily do if we're planning, you know, how we're going to resurface a road and integrate other complete streets. But it is very much placemaking, and it very much is an access issue.
So that's one way in terms of responding to Patrick's request. You know, the board could officially encourage, you know, pass it on to the planning board for them to adopt. I mean, I don't know what the formal protocol should be.
Yeah, I think there's some good questions process-wise. One of the things that we talked a little bit about during the budget process this past year was how to make sure that the goals that are represented in some of the land use planning and guidance documents, such as the master plan and what the planning board is doing, is reflected in this budget that the select board brings to town meeting. And so one of the things that we're going to be doing this year, this is my first try approaching something this way, so we'll see how this all goes, but it's basically making sure that our budget process is not building a budget off of what we did last year, but is based a little bit more on some of the goals and priorities of the select board and the community. So we're talking about ways to try and facilitate, you know, multi-stakeholder goal setting and priority setting that comes back to the select board, so that you all can say, yeah, here are the most important things that we want to be planning for next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And then when we go back and do our budget requests on the staff side to come back to you all, we can make sure that we're designing a budget with staffing levels or resources going to the places that are kind of the higher priorities. And so just from a process standpoint, hoping that we're going to connect the dots a little bit more in the way that we're talking about this year, beyond on the planning board and land use side too.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right, so what we've been discussing is how not to basically have this go by the wayside and ignored, which it's not going to be.
I guess one of my concerns is the previous, and Joanna, I think, did a good job detailing like why it happened, but the previous plan was adopted by the select board, and to the extent that the select board has a responsibility to oversee our public spaces and our roads and sidewalks, and an obligation that they're safe. I'm worried that if we also don't just adopt it, that we would be perhaps negligent in our duties and obligations.
I don't.
I think I'd like to understand
Yeah.
what the financial implications are in terms of us adopting it.
Yeah, we left that pretty flexible, just that we would, if these are our priorities, that the idea is that, I think Alex said it pretty well, that our priorities are in line with, you know, our budget. It's not like committing funds. The good thing is that pedestrian facilities are so much less expensive to build and maintain than roads. Like a simple parking spot costs about $3,500 just because you have to engineer it to hold a car. Whereas that whole multi-use path along Lime Road only cost, by town reports, I wasn't there, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, like $60,000 to $80,000 is what I've read.
It was more than that, but
That's what that's what it was reported as.
Yeah.
That's all I know. And that is slated to last 50 years. The sidewalks we have in Main Street have not been updated since the 1980s. So they've lasted considerably longer, or not, if you want to roll over them with very tiny wheels, as people in walkers do. And then, you know, our streets that see a lot of vehicular traffic are resurfaced every, 5 to 7 years at a much greater cost.
Sure.
So as to like the budgetary considerations, there's sort of two big ways of looking at it. Is, do we want to double down on carbon intensive infrastructure and stuff that doesn't provide, independence for a lot of people, or health and well-being and safety and connectivity? Or do we want to invest in what we, purport to believe in? But also, there's this other idea that it's opening up funding opportunities, because as a country now, we've acknowledged that we are behind, and we have a desire to catch up and embrace some of these best practices. And then I guess the third one that's like not talked about is a lot about how we use the resources that we have, which is essentially cost neutral. Like if you drive, particularly on some of these roads, if you drive 5 miles an hour slower, you get to your destination at the exact same time, particularly if you drive through an area that has a lot of pedestrians. And speeding between those two areas makes that area a lot less safe to walk and bike, a lot less safe for other people, and doesn't get you there any faster. So there's issues like that where we could just be changing and shifting the operation of our streets. And there's a lot of, Pete Buttigieg just spoke to this, there are a lot of simple, maybe not easy, but simple things that can be done now that we know are proven countermeasures, if we make that our vision. So that's why I would be interested in adopting it.
Okay.
Should we set a public hearing?
Yeah, I mean, the word adopting, I mean, there's a whole, the implications of adopting versus accepting versus.
Yeah, it's a little unclear to me because I was unable to find a public hearing or agenda with the plan, but I have read that the previous plan was adopted by the select board in different memos. So I, maybe Bill or Scott or Joanna could speak to how that happened. In my ability to research it, I don't know what happened previously.
I don't remember either, and I was involved with that as well. However, I'm just curious as to what basically what the words mean, meaning adopt versus accept the report versus incorporate it into our planning processes.
Well, do we know what we did last time?
What?
No, we don't.
So maybe to help, I think there's probably a few different things we could do. What's the goal of the book? What do you all want to do? And maybe we can figure out the process based on,
yeah, right. This extensive work should be part of the town's planning process as we move forward, is how I'm thinking of it. We're not going to accept every word and every concept in here, but it should be utilized in an incredibly productive way when we're thinking about the future of the town. I'm not sure what to do with that concept.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the planning board, I might not understand the full scope of the planning board, and Nancy, maybe you can speak to this, but I don't know how much the planning board has like jurisdiction or whatever, oversight over like the operation of our streets. But the select board does have an obligation to look after our streets. So it seems remiss if we just say, well, this will just be a planning thing, because there definitely is things that impact zoning and land use, and it definitely is important within our planning. But because we're talking about, if you skip back to, Patrick, if you go back to your second slide. When we talk about the role of this plan, we're talking about the role of our streets. Those streets are more than just ways to get from A to B. They're these important community places, right? They impact everything from sustainability to equity to health and well-being to the economic vitality of our downtown, right? And they're also about a network. So we're really talking about the power of a network, and that's something that very much touches on planning, but also very much touches on what we do here as members of the select board.
Yeah, Jenny, I hope I'm not interrupting you. It sounded like you were at the end of your thoughts. I'm not arguing with that at all. I'm just trying to figure out, and I'm not arguing against any point in here at the moment. I just want to make sure we utilize this appropriately. And I agree with your concepts, but how best to put it to work is a little bit unclear.
Rob has a suggestion too.
Alex, were you going to say something? No, I thought you raised your hand.
If you want to go ahead, Rob. I've got a thought too.
Sure. Rob Hausman, Director of Planning, provide support to the Bike Walk Committee, among other things. I'm going to start with the premise that the Sustainable Master Plan is a very different document than a traditional master plan. The traditional master plan creates a bunch of silos: transportation, housing, land use, future land use, and it drives the process for creating zoning, site plan, and subdivision regulations primarily. This plan is an interwoven, integrated plan that deals with all segments of this community and touches on both public and private sector responsibilities. And I think the suggestion of rolling it into the master plan, which it has been in many chapters, and adopted by reference in that plan as an appendix, is a very solid recommendation. The challenge I would have is that if we were to adopt the plan, and I'm not a select board member and I'm not wishing to speak for you, but the idea of then translating the plan into capital improvements program is set. It's being carried forward into the master plan. The master plan ideally will drive how we improve our infrastructure. That infrastructure improvement plan will then be used to come up with the cost estimates of the capital improvements plan. So my suggestion would be to accept the plan and forward it to the planning department for full integration into the master plan.
I like that solution. It's a concrete way of moving forward, and I like that a lot, Rob. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
Alex, were you going to say something?
No, I think that makes sense. And if we're going to consider the master plan as the sort of central epicenter, we should make sure that the Vision Zero also goes in that direction too.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it should be the foundational work for our CIP committee. That it shouldn't. We've gone through this extensive public process. The Bike Walk Committee has met with people, done all this work, had engagement, as has the Sustainability Master Plan Committee. And so that should be the foundation. And I know we're off topic, but the CIP committee should work with that. And we shouldn't be going out and soliciting more information. This is our document. Let's work on it and let's move all of this good work forward.
Okay. Rob?
Only Joanne touched on a point that I didn't mention, which is the statutory requirement that the CIP be incorporated, represent the vision of the master plan, is one of the thresholds.
Wait, say that again?
Capital improvements program evaluation should represent the vision of the master plan.
Capital
improvement program.
Committee.
And just being set up.
Right. And technically the standard practice, though that may not be the right word in New Hampshire, is the planning board does the capital planning which creates an even, like a closer connection point, because obviously the master plan is going through the planning board, and so is the CIP in some towns.
Okay.
Yes, I think we're going down that hole, sorry.
Except that, as it exists today, the Capital Improvement Plan Committee is divorced from, or
No,
is rising separately from planning board. It is its own entity.
Yes.
Accurate?
So we have to do one extra step of intentionality to make sure the points are connected. I guess my point was that in other towns, if the planning board is doing both, it's a little naturally more connected because it's literally the same group of people who just finished, perhaps, redoing the master plan, who are now moving on to the annual CIP.
Right.
For us, we just need to make sure that's connected, which will include representation on the CIP from the planning board and the select board and some other stakeholders as well. And perhaps one of the things that CIP can do in the very early discussions is have a conversation about what are sort of guiding and governing documents are, and make sure that we all are clear where the priorities are coming from.
Per the statutes.
Yes.
So does this committee have a statutory framework right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or there's a
We'll
statutory
get to it.
requirement
I thought it-
and minimum.
The planning board has to be
From
involved.
It's not really,
nimble mind.
it's not really a framework, it's
It's a floor.
a floor, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I advance some potential
Please,
motion?
sure.
Look to Jenny, and with much gratitude to Patrick and Bill and everybody who presented. It's an amazing plan. So I'll try this out, and please feel free to make amendments. So move to accept with gratitude the Hanover Walk Bike Plan as a guide to inform planning and delivery of town services, and further to be incorporated into the Hanover Sustainable Master Plan and the development of the Capital Improvement Plan.
Sustainability, but other than that,
I
yeah.
think that's great.
I'll
The only
second that.
And the one,
So you can,
and forwarding it to, basically to Rob as well.
Yes, I
Yeah.
think Rob's implicit in
Yeah.
all of that. Yes.
Boggling his head, yes.
Send it to Rob.
And so we have,
Put that down in the motion to Rob.
To Rob, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
so we have a motion to accept and a second. I think we've done a lot of good discussion on this, and I think we've reached a really good place. Any further discussion? Great. Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So, thank you. We accepted that.
Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Members of the committee.
It's great. Thank you, committee. I know you put in hours and hours and weeks and months into this. So,
we're halfway there. Are we?
some of them are going to be quick. All right, we are moving on to item number 9, which is Twin Pines Housing Introduction and Workforce Housing Overview.
We'd like to be able to hear, and if you could turn the white noise down a little bit, it'd be good, maybe people could speak up a little louder.
Is the heat pump noisy? Okay.
And very chilly.
It is very chilly.
Also, there's a few seats that just opened up, so
Yeah,
feel
move up
free to
front.
Move up too.
I'm actually gonna.
If you're out of the direct, maybe if you came up, we'll try speaking more loudly, Marjorie.
Thank you.
We used to have those speakers activated. I don't know what happened to them.
No, that's a whole.
And we used to have
speakers.
Add it to the list. It's like at my house. Oh, that doesn't work.
With the new
either?
microphones, basically, it picks up so much that it's really good on the recording. Basically, we prioritize the recording and the live over in the room. But doing both requires new equipment.
Got it. Thank you. New equipment. Please.
Rob House with Planning Department. We have here tonight Andrew Winters, Director, and Beth Long, Deputy Director of Twin Pines, who were asked to come tonight and just introduce themselves to the board and what Twin Pines does in the Upper Valley. We'll kick it off. Andrew, go ahead.
Before you start, I mean, thank you, Rob. This is just to repeat what Rob just said, this is an introduction. We are not planning anything now. We are beginning a long discussion that will involve multiple areas and scenarios for public input, and we look forward to that discussion, that continued discussion. Please, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Again, Andrew Winter, Beth Long, delighted to be here with you this evening. So a little bit about, we've got about 12 slides here. A little bit of an overview on what workforce housing is, and a little bit of an overview on some of the projects that we have collaborated with the town on before. I know we've got some new select board members, and we thought that this would be a great opportunity to talk about the work that we have jointly done together. So a little bit about Twin Pines. We are a nonprofit organization. We have a board of 19. Some of you may have read recently we've gotten a little bit bigger. We've got 19 on our board of trustees, which includes 9 residents and 10 members of the community at large. We have 565 rental units in the Upper Valley, and that sort of includes units primarily in the core of the Upper Valley, Hanover, Lebanon, and Hartford, but we also have properties in Woodstock to the west and Enfield to the east. In addition, we provide home ownership opportunities, primarily in Vermont. Vermont, much more aggressive about fostering affordable home ownership than New Hampshire, but we do have some units in New Hampshire, including some at Guile Hill that I'll talk about a little bit later. And we've got nearly 200 units in development, and we'll talk about some of those projects. So a couple of projects just to kind of give you a sense of what affordable housing can look like. One of the things that you'll hopefully come away from is the fact that none of these buildings look alike. And that is every project, every population we're trying to serve, every location calls for sometimes a different treatment in terms of what we're doing. So at the top here, Rivermere is a project of 21 units in Lebanon that was constructed in 2013, and down below Summer Park in Hanover, you can see all the solar panels. Thank you for helping us with that project. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So a little bit about more about Twin Pines. We survey our residents, 87% of whom would recommend Twin Pines housing to someone else. 99% of whom renewed their leases in 2022. 85% of our residents take advantage of supportive services at some level. And that means we're connecting them with services, benefits, and whatever they need to try to remain healthy and housed. And that is very much something that we're proud of, that sets us apart from a lot of for-profit landlords who don't have those kinds of services. So we've got some residents at Village of Crafts Hill in Lebanon, and then Summer Park down below. So we're going to focus our conversation a little bit around workforce housing, and that's typically defined as housing affordable to people at 120% of area median. We'll talk about area median, but basically it's the concept that half the incomes are above, half the incomes are below, and that is typically the up to 120%. Most of the programs we look at are focused on households at 60 to 80% of the area median, but there are some that go lower, some that go higher. In addition, we also do senior housing, Mellish Woods. This is a project that we just purchased in Woodstock. It's tired, it's old. We're looking to renovate that. We're really excited about that, and frankly, the work that we did with Hanover is helping to inform some of the work that we'll be doing there. In that project, we've got a couple of older historic buildings, but we also have some buildings built in the 1970s, not unlike what we were dealing with over at Summer Park. As I mentioned, we do home ownership. We also do specialized housing, including housing for the homeless and dedicated housing for the chronically homeless. So you see there 747 Hartford Ave in White River. That's a project that we're doing in conjunction with the Upper Valley Haven, St. Paul's Episcopal Church, adjacent to the Upper Valley Haven, where we'll be creating 18 units with services for the chronically homeless. Wanted to give you some examples of workforce housing. One of them is right here in Hanover, Guile Hill, and for those of you who don't know a lot about it, that was a 20-acre parcel that was donated to Twin Pines. Town meeting voted to make that donation, and we ultimately developed 120 units of housing with a mix of rental and ownership units, 76 apartments, 44 condo units, including 7 that are affordable for sale homes. And 61 of those rental homes are restricted to those at 50 to 60% of the area median. I'm going to give you some numbers to kind of put eyes on what's 50 to 60% of the area median. What does that mean? And then we also have 15 units that are affordable households up to 120% of area median. And those homes were all built over a number of years from 2007 to 2016. Woodstock, we've got a project called Stafford Commons, 28 units of rental. And that serves 50 to 100% of the area median. There is a home ownership component. We've done 4 home ownership. Again, I talked about Vermont, a little bit more support for home ownership. We're doing 4 homes. We did 4 homes this past year, sold those last year, excuse me. We'll do another 4 units, 4 homes this coming year. But again, another example of a community stepping up to do workforce housing. New London, Long Meadow Commons. This is a project that we're doing right across the street from New London Hospital. We had a group of citizens who said, we really need some housing in New London. There's very little rental housing available. And it has become a huge drain on the economy of that community in terms of the ability of the hospital, the college, Colby Sawyer to recruit folks at a range of salaries. And so we're moving forward with this project with units at 60% and hopefully up to 80% of AMI. Funding decisions are hopefully going to be coming down shortly. But again, another example of what workforce housing can be like. So this is 15 unit buildings, 4 15 unit buildings on a site within walking distance of the hospital, right across the street. And this is a slightly different model. This is, for those of you who are familiar with the Listen Centers, you go across the bridge. On the right is Prospect Street, and the Riverwalk Apartments is going up very quickly, 42 units. This is a turnkey development where we actually have DEW, the original developer of the development there, the 2 other buildings that are developed on Prospect Street, who is going to be building this. We're going to be coming in and buying it right before substantial completion. A range of incomes, 50 to 100% of the area median, with units for homeless families and individuals, with services provided by the Haven and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. We also will talk a little bit about Upper Valley Workforce Housing Fund. They're providing some funding here. That is a pot of money that Dartmouth College, Dartmouth Health, Mascoma Bank, King Arthur, among other employers, Hypotherm, all putting dollars in to help develop workforce housing because they realize what a critical need it is at this time. And another Hanover project, just to kind of talk about for the benefit of the newer members, is Summer Park. So for those of you who know this story, 24 units of senior housing was originally developed back in the 1970s. It was not in great shape. One of the things that it suffered from is the fact that it was senior housing, but it had 2-story walk-ups. And as folks are living longer, often more frail, it really was increasingly a challenge for many of the seniors living there to safely navigate up and down. So we built the first phase on the right side of this building, 24 units. We relocated everybody from the existing housing into the new building, then demolished the old buildings, added a second wing to increase the number of units on site from 24 to 42, a mixture of 31-bed and 12 studio apartments. All of the units are restricted to households at or below 60%. Many of the units at or below 50% with rental assistance, which was vitally important. So, folks paying 30% of their income, particularly for seniors who may not have much beyond Social Security. Having access to this kind of safe sanitary housing in a superior location like this, town water, sewer, public transportation, a huge benefit to everybody. So I mentioned AMI. Here's where the numbers show up. So U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development every year looks at the income limits for counties and metropolitan communities all across the country. And generally, the numbers go up. They certainly have gone up quite a bit this last year due to wage inflation. And then what we see is most of the workforce housing is sort of focused in 50, 60, 80%, which you can see, we may have a single person, 35,000, 2 people at 48,000, 3 people at 72,000, 80,000 for a family of 4. It's based on family size. And so that kind of gives you a sense of who we're talking about. It's people making 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, $80,000. Some of the projects that I mentioned that go up to 100%, we're looking at folks qualifying in the mid-90s. And why does that matter? Because depending on the family size, they may really struggle to find affordable housing in this marketplace. So a little bit of background around how rental housing is financed. So we generally look at a variety of federal and state grants. Many of those come through, in New Hampshire, through New Hampshire Housing or New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, or the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority. So those are the two major players in New Hampshire. There is the Workforce Housing Fund that I talked about. We're utilizing that both in New London and also in White River Junction. But the biggest source of funding is the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, and that is a federal resource. It is allocated to the states then turn around and allocate it to eligible projects. Much of that funding is competitive, either because you're getting competitive credits or because you need other funding that is also competitive to subsidize, essentially to fit together with that, those state tax credits. We then turn around and sell those federal tax credits, typically to banks, and then we get the equity in and use that to develop the housing. And in exchange, we agree to rent the units to households with incomes less than 60% of area median income on average. So that's a little bit about what we do, how we do it. I'm happy to take questions. I went through that quickly. I know you've got a long agenda and we've already been at this for a while. So.
Thank you, Andrew. That's a really nice summary. Are there any questions for Andrew right now with regard to the presentation, Nancy?
Andrew, the AMI is based, does that change from county to county or state to state or what?
Yeah, yes, great question. So that changes county to county.
Okay.
So, Grafton County a little bit higher than Windsor County across the river, a little bit lower than Merrimack County down Concord Way. But it changes and it changes every year.
And by a significant portion, Hanover to
last year, going from 2022 to 2023, it was about an 18% jump. It's the biggest jump I'd seen in the 8 years I've been looking at it. I have not yet calculated. The New Hampshire numbers just came out last week, and I haven't calculated it. But that was a huge jump last year. But everybody's seen it with the competitive search for employees. It's pushing up wages.
And it's not just, sometimes it's not just the wages of people who were here before COVID, but this is going to reflect those who may have relocated here during COVID and maybe working remotely. And so again, that's putting upward pressure on the income rates.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Andrew, you've worked across a whole bunch of different property types, different types of construction, et cetera. When you think about workforce housing, the model, are you, how viable, Guile Hill, for instance, with the 7 units that are, there's a split on the appreciation. Is that a model that you currently think is workable for workforce housing? And then secondly, with respect to density and rising construction costs, what's viable in terms of scale?
Yeah, so Guile Hill, I'll just throw back up there. So I think you're asking about those 7 affordable home ownership opportunities. Those were made possible in part because we could build units and sell them at a price that allowed us to internally subsidize the project. So one of the things that we're up against is with rising construction costs is everything's costing an arm and a leg. I will say this was not an easy project, and that's probably an understatement. For those of you who've been involved in the town for a long time, you know that this was not an easy project. There were significant cost overruns. This was a free site donated by the town taxpayers of Hanover in exchange for an agreement that at least 50% of the units would be affordable. We're at 57%, so I think the taxpayers got a good benefit, but it was a challenging site because of the amount of ledge, so there were some cost overruns related to this site. And then those for sale homes, which are speculative by their nature, this project came to market at a very tough time. It was 2007, 2008, 2009. It was not a great time to be carrying speculative homes. It took longer. The last homes at Guile Hill sold in 2012. You can kind of do the math and recognize that we were carrying the construction loans until we could pay off the construction loans. So it is a challenge to do speculative for sale home ownership for folks. And I'm happy to be doing 4 unit projects in Vermont where we're doing all affordable. I know those homes are going to sell because I'm selling those homes, or we're selling those homes for.
Sorry.
No worries. We're selling those homes for $220,000. If somebody were to go out and find them on the market, they'd be $350,000. So it's a good program for people looking to get into home ownership. A little bit harder with speculative for sale homes, and then density. When it comes to density, we definitely try to encourage more units. So that project, to kind of look at a project, this is a 60-unit project in New London going on roughly 7-8 acre parcel. Very expensive to do infrastructure. Infrastructure right now is one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing. Finding people to do the digging, finding the requirements around stormwater management, drainage, those are all things that require a lot of engineering and as a result, sort of push up the cost of projects. So we really are looking at greater density when we're trying to do these types of projects. So.
I had a question about the units that were sold, and this might not be for you, but I know you mentioned that you needed to sell them for the construction loans, but it strikes me that once they're sold, then they could become just regular market value homes, and I was wondering what your experience was with that and how the decisions were made that those should be sold and not rented. I know we've had like that kind of little shift in how many rental units we have versus how many homes for sale, where there are more, bought homes now than there are rented units, which wasn't, it used to be pretty 50-50 and now it's like 60-40.
Actually, it's gone the other direction. So originally, the original plan was going to be just 61 rental and 59 home ownership units, for sale units. And that was that originally included 8 affordable home ownership units.
Sorry,
When-
I meant in Hanover, not specifically.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
so yeah, I don't know the full history of this, and
Yeah,
that's
so
what I was wondering about.
this was actually something where we ended up in this particular project, shifting one of the last ownership buildings to rental. And in doing so, made sure to pick up the right number of, make sure that we met that 50% requirement with affordability at this particular project. So that was.
Could I jump in for a second?
Sure.
So for our affordable homes, they have a deeded resale restriction where they can't be resold at a market rate. They need to remain affordable, and we do that through deed restrictions. I think perhaps that was the question being asked.
that was my question.
It's a fairly complex structure. In Vermont, I think it's the same as referred to as a shared equity program, where the appreciation is put back into the home to allow at least 75% of the increase in the equity is put back into the home in order to allow the next owner to also have an affordable home. But as Andrew's alluded to a couple of times, unfortunately, New Hampshire is not supporting the construction costs of home ownership at this time. And Guile was a challenge that I'm not sure we'd be up to again.
Thank you very much for the presentation about where you've been. Now, moving forward on a project in concert with public entities such as the town, what sort of process have we gone? What do you typically go through?
Sure. So the typical process, as we did with both Guile and the Summer Park, is to enter into what's called an option agreement, and that is an agreement between the town as seller and Twin Pines as buyer to buy the property upon the occasion of certain things. So typically it's dependent on completion of permitting, obtaining all of the necessary financing, agreement as to the number of affordable units to be constructed, things like that. So there's a process that gets laid out in the option agreement, and then once we've done all of that, we come back to the town and say, okay, we've done all of that. We're ready to move forward with purchasing the property and beginning construction. So we tend to back end the actual purchase of the property because we're going to be using an option in the interim, and part of that is it allows us to move forward with confidence that we're in agreement as to the goals for the project. It also helps us around what we call choice limiting activities. So funding that we obtain for this project, as I mentioned, is federal in nature, and the federal government doesn't want organizations like Twin Pines or anybody developing housing utilizing federal funding to purchase property before undertaking an environmental activity, before undertaking this environmental review. And the idea is, once upon a time, the federal government would sign off on projects and housing might be located in areas that we look at today and say we shouldn't put housing there, whether it's because it's in a flood zone or because of its proximity to a brownfield or something like that. So we undertake that review prior to executing a purchase and sale agreement or prior to purchasing the property.
And thank you. Joanna, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, you've talked a lot about getting money from the feds, obviously that's where we get our money, but we are really looking forward to workforce housing, which isn't necessarily 50% of median, it's generally higher. And I'm just wondering how we can reach kind of some of our, do we have unrealistic goals to have passive house, try to meet a passive house standard in terms of super energy efficiency, really good design, and, where do you get the money?
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I'll put it to the select board this way. One of the benefits of working with, a piece of property that the town would like to make available for development is the less we pay for the land, the more we can put into the building. So, example, Summer Park. Summer Park is a passive house certified building. So, for those of you not familiar with passive house, it means it uses anywhere from 70 to 80% less energy than a typical code compliant building. So we have R40 walls, we have R60 roof at a minimum, we have R20, R25 insulation under the slab, we have triple glazed windows, we have air source heat pumps, we have solar on the roof. All of those things contribute to making it a really energy efficient building, and that's something that as an agency, we've tried to push wherever we can in our portfolio. So the goal here would be to really try to make sure that we're getting units at 60, 80, and taking advantage of the Upper Valley Housing Fund, Workforce Housing Fund, see if we can get some units at 100% or even higher. Again, our focus is going to be under 120% of the area median, so you can kind of extrapolate from here where we're headed. But the goal would be to try to get all of those different funding sources together and put it together in a way that makes the deal work.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrew.
One quick question, Andrew. Your portfolio right now under development and so in development, would you say that you are maxed out as an agency in terms of what I see how ambitious the New London project is and so forth, or do you still have capacity?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the good news is we have 2 full-time project managers. Oh. We also have a part-time development consultant, and then we utilize third-party development consultants on top of that with specialty on putting together all of the financing that we need. So we do have capacity. The good news is that of those projects that I talked about, we've got 82 units currently under construction. We're closing on another project, the 747 project in White River Junction for the chronically homeless. That's 100. Then we've got 100. Then we've got 60 units that have been permitted in New London. Probably not going to begin construction much before next year. It can take that long to pull together all of the bits and pieces of financing. So we have the capacity, particularly as we embark on an early conversations around what the project might look like, elicit community conversations or participate in community conversations around what the project might look like. That all takes time. So we've got plenty of work, but we're always looking forward, and this is a project that we would love to look at.
And you're kind of careful about staggering these things. I hear you say this amount of development, that amount of planning and so forth. You're careful with that.
I mean, while it's nice to occasionally have a project sail through in 1 or 2 planning and zoning board meetings, as did Riverwalk. That 42 units and was literally 1 meeting with the planning board, 1 meeting with the zoning board in Hartford. We often are going through months of this and back and forth, and we hear concerns or we hear things from abutters that they would like to see changed, and we often try to work with those where we can. So it's a lengthy process, so we give ourselves a little bit of a runway.
Okay.
Super grateful for what you've done for Hanover and the surrounding community, but I'm going to ask this question anyway, which is, who do you typically compete against?
So, the Lebanon Housing Authority, is, they recently undertook a project called Heater Landing, the 40 units down across from Lebanon High School. In Vermont, the state basically acts as arbiter and says, here's the housing organization for this part of the state. And so, we have our catchment area in the Upper Valley, so it runs out to actually to Rochester. I have to remember Rochester is part of Windsor County, but we only go as far north as Fairleigh, Heartland. There are agencies to the north and south, but again, not competing. In New Hampshire, there are agencies, but none really operating in this area. There's one up in the North Country, one down in Concord, one down in Keene, and so unfortunately Claremont is probably would benefit from more opportunities there. So, and then the only other option in our area would be the Vermont State Housing Authority. So they're working statewide.
So this was meant to be an introduction to the concept, and moving forward is something which we basically, need to plan how to move forward, get public comment. This was not really meant to be a public hearing, but how do we get public comment, and how do we make plans, revise plans, as you're talking about moving forward? I'm not really asking a question, but that is the intent of how we proceed with this project.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any project, almost regardless of size, whether it's big or small, requires a significant expenditure of dollars on our end, anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 to get a project permitted. That's a lot of money. And so, we need to be thoughtful about the process that we engage in, and we need to have, clear indicators that that there's a, concept that folks are getting behind, so that we can move forward confidently. As I mentioned, we're a nonprofit organization. That's a lot of money. And again, 18-unit project in Hartford, $150,000.
To get the permitting, you mean?
To get the permits. Yeah. You think it was closer to two?
275.
Okay. Yeah. So. It was a lot of money.
Okay. I'm sorry.
I can give you a little bit more, or
I think we're okay right now. If I don't, board, I think we're good with this discussion. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I really wanted to make sure that first thank the past members of the current members who've been on the board for a while for all of your support in the past, but definitely wanted to make sure that we came before you, introduced Twin Pines and gave you a little bit of background about who we are. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,
There's a question.
Kari?
Are you taking questions or comments?
I wasn't really planning on it tonight, Kari. We weren't really prepared to do so. Did you have a?
Can I just ask a process question there?
Sure, come on up, Kari.
Thank you. So thank you for taking this, because I think that a lot of people in the community actually are very unclear on the order in which things are going to happen and how they're going to unfold. And we sort of heard a little bit about that tonight, including that, one of the things I learned is that first you would enter in, what was the correct term, sort of a contract where they have an option or where you have an option. And I guess the question is, and then the transfer would happen after all the conditions are met. So that's kind of new information. But is there any sort of, I guess, timetable in which that would happen? I, heard it was announced a couple of meetings ago that tonight you would be going into non-public to discuss in private what conditions would be part of that agreement. And so is that discussion going to be the final discussion, or will you, before you enter into that primary or that preliminary contract, or will there be an opportunity for, another community forum or a tour of the property where, things are kind of, the boundaries? So when are you making the decisions and what?
We're still very preliminary. I don't have a timetable. I don't think anybody has a timetable.
So when we do, we'll share it.
Yeah, thank you.
When we know what we're doing, we'll make sure we share it, but we don't have a timetable, so we're not going into secret session and making some decisions. We need to talk about it, and then we will come back and there will be public process. And there has to be, an architect, a land use planner, all these things have to be engaged before we before we run wild. So there's going to be a public process, and we'll be sure.
Yeah.
I think we're all committed to making sure that information is made available.
So we're not making any decisions tonight, or we're not?
That's good to know, because people didn't know.
Yeah, I understand.
So there, when there's not information, there's speculation.
Absolutely.
So
thank you, Kari, for bringing that up.
Yeah. So then you're going into non-public, you'll have an initial discussion, but before you enter into this, the contract that gives people an option, or gives Twin Pines an option, there will be additional opportunities for the community to let you know what's important to them.
That's exactly what we need to set up. That part we all think is vital. I'm speaking for myself, and I hope for everybody. And we have not set up that process yet, but
it's just in some other instances that process would have already really begun, and and people would be welcome to give comments tonight, but I understand it's getting late and you want to go into non-public.
No, the intent was just to introduce to the public Twin Pines, because it was clear at town meeting that was an unclear process. And no, this was not set up to be a public hearing back and forth or to take input, because it was an introduction. And yes, we are moving deliberately, which also means slowly. Not always, they're not equivalent, but frequently on this process. So we're not trying to rush into anything.
All right, and in terms of the introduction to Twin Pines, if anybody had questions of Twin Pines, would there be another opportunity for them to ask Twin Pines if they have questions? Since
I would
they're
envision
here?
that, yeah.
Okay.
I hope that's part of the process, yes.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Kari. All right, we already did 10, which is a 4114A.
And we did 11.
And we kind of talked about 11. We did talk about 11, didn't we?
Could we just
Summarize?
Yeah.
So what's in August? So July is the 24th?
So yeah, we had July 10th that we were proposing to cancel and then hold the meeting on July 24th.
Yep.
And then cancel August 7th and hold the meeting on August 21st.
1 second. Sure. I may not be available on the 21st, but...
I mean, the caveat, of course, is the meetings will probably be slightly longer, but the benefit, of course, that they're only once a month.
I can still speak. What is, we talked about availability on the 24th of July. Is there availability on the board for the 21st of August? Meaning, are we going to have a quorum and moving forward? Jenny?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay. Joanne? I'm not sure where I'm going to be on the 21st, but it sounds like we'll scrounge up a good quorum. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not 100% on that
Okay.
one, but I think I should be able to be back here by the evening.
Okay.
Okay,
All right,
that all works?
let's just stick with that for now.
Okay,
And-
so then we will cancel the July 10th and cancel the August 7th. And if for some reason anything changes or something.
I mean, alternatively, we could do, the
The week
28th of
before?
July, or let's just stick with what we decided and
Okay.
deal with that.
If anybody finds out who thought they could be there on the
Yeah.
August 21st and aren't, let me and Carrie know, and then we'll figure it out.
Okay.
What, Joanne? I was just wondering how long the number item 12 would be. Because we have someone in the audience, I think, who wants to speak to item 16.
That's right.
Well, we can.
There's two people. I'm just saying.
Yeah,
if
let's
it's
do that.
quick-
No, let's
if
do
it's
that.
quick, I
Let's
just
move.
know it's been a long.
Let's go to item 16, because I don't think anybody here is for 12,
The other
13 through
things.
15, 12 through 15. So we're going to go to item 16, which is review the revised proposal from the Hanover Improvement Society for Campion Rink. And we have a letter, and as a bit of history, the select board committed to funding, I don't remember when, in the past. And this is a revised proposal that will be, that is being submitted to us and to the trustees of trust funds, seeking funding for the Campion Rink process and programs. So there is an informal, we don't really have a formal process for applications for this, and it's been an ongoing discussion, which, as I said earlier, was previously approved. And we do have a letter in our packet outlining that as well. So discussion on that, Joanna?
Sure. So my recollection is, for the past 4 or 5 years, the select board makes reviews, requests for funding from the Brissette Fund. So we were given, the town was gifted this amazing endowment to enhance the town of Hanover through the Brissette family. There's an endowment that the funding at the discretion of the select board, in accordance with the will of the Brissette family, was to fund activities and programs that would not normally be funded by the taxpayer dollar. And over the years, this is my recollection, and having attended my first trustees of trust funds meeting last week, there's a whole list of things that the Brissette funds have been used for, ranging from our sustainability director to kind of a new position, new program, to supporting, I don't know, I can't even remember, but a whole plethora of items. Campion Rink, which is actually run by the Hanover Improvement Society, which is a nonprofit. They run the Campion Rink for skating and hockey. They run Stores Pond for summer recreation, and they run the Nugget, which is a for-profit entity, but Stores Pond and Campion are nonprofits that kind of meets a community need that the town of Hanover does not fund summer programs to that extent. We don't have our pool, we don't have a skating rink, and so it's an entity that kind of fills that void. And we have enjoyed, I don't know, the Nugget celebrated its 100th birthday 2 years ago, so it's been around for a while.
Ice cream. Don't forget
That's
the
the
ice
rental
cream.
programs. That's a money-making endeavor. But anyway, so Campion Rink is going through a renewal. Everyone's seen the programming, fundraising effort for that. They came to the select board and asked for support for that effort. The select board unanimously supported the effort to renew the facility, issuing the thinking was to issue $100,000 this year and $100,000 next year. We made the commitment. The Improvement Society, Campion Rink is counting on that money. We have subsequently read more thoroughly the legal will, and it's very clear in the will that funding is not to be used to support bricks and mortar, which is the application that came in was very much related to renovating the Campion Rink, bringing it up to speed. We, talking to the trustees of trust funds and the applicant to Campion, Hanover Improvement Society people, they have other funding needs. They could use some help during this renewal process to run their programs. And so they have resubmitted in the letter in our packet to see if we could use that funding to fund their skating and hockey programs over the next 2 years, this year and next year, while they're putting a lot of their work into renewing their facility. And so I think that's what's before us today. Is that more or less what you hear? And I don't know if Derek, I know, did you want to speak to anything, or, you know, he's from the Hanover Improvement Society, and he's not asleep back there. You've been a solid person. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, no, please.
I'd be happy to speak very briefly. My name is Don Derrick. I live in Carter Street in Hanover. I'm with the Hanover Improvement Society. The only thing I would say is I do remember, like, I think it was 2 town meetings ago, the town meeting approved a payment of $200,000 to the rink for the bricks and mortar.
Right.
So I want to make sure everybody knows that the town meeting was in favor of this. I'm really here tracking the easement. But,
Thank you.
But,
okay, sorry, I thought you were here for this.
If anybody has any questions about
Appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
So what
Sorry.
is being asked of us tonight to review it? Are we accepting it?
Yeah, so
Revised?
an approval tonight would then, there's an approval that's, and like you mentioned, we don't have a great process set up, something that I think we'll probably be figuring out with the trustees, you know, over the coming months, but there's a dual approval required, one of the select board and one of the trustees,
Okay.
so this would be one half of that.
Okay. So is there a motion? Joanne?
I should be clear.
Oh, yes, you should.
I
Yeah.
want to in full disclosure, in 2012, I was nominated to be on the Hanover Improvement Society, to become a member of the Hanover Improvement Society, which it's a member organization. There's about 25 members, and there's an executive board that runs the general manager who manages the property. I am.
You want to say?
Well, I'm a mere member, and I wanted to put it to the board that, you know, I've served on this entity for 10 years, and there's no.
She can't vote. There's no like decision-making power.
I don't have any power at the Hanover
Yeah.
Improvement Society, but if I put you in an awkward place, I will recuse myself.
I would like to suggest that you stay right where you are, that you vote on this issue, that you will not be penalized for the information you already know, and I'm very comfortable with having you vote on this issue.
Yeah, likewise. Board? Jenny?
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Great. So we need a motion. I'll make a motion. I move that we accept the revised proposal from the Hanover Improvement Society for funding with the Campion Rink and programs.
So second.
I have an amendment.
Okay.
So, Kariasmus as a trustee, I think that it would be helpful if your motion included what amount is for what fiscal year.
That is
We
helpful.
actually definitely need that.
Kari, thank you, that's very helpful.
For programs, 100,000 this fiscal year, and 100,000 next fiscal year.
That's what I understood as well, thank you. Did you hear that?
I thought that would be it, but the record needs to show it,
I
and we need to see
yeah,
it in
so,
the minutes.
Could you restate it, please, Joanna?
Recommend that the friendly amendment to the motion that $100,000 be dispersed in this fiscal year, which is FY '23, and $100,000 be dispersed in FY '24 to cover the costs of the skating and hockey programs at Campion Rink.
Thank you.
My motion coincides with that language.
Okay, I think we're all set.
I'm sorry.
I think we're all set.
My second. Yeah, we're good.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Kari. I'd like to call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. So I think we're back to item 12.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kari.
Bye, Kari.
Yes, this is something we left over because we didn't have everybody. Nancy was not able to be with us last time, correct, right? When we did, no need to apologize. We did not appoint select board liaisons for Sustainable Hanover Committee and the Capital Improvement Plan Committee. Let's do these one by one. We have in the minutes the assignments, and I was looking at them this morning.
I do have them here.
Yeah, fortunately they're written up in the minutes pretty nicely. So I'll just go, let me just read them. We have Joanna as the liaison to the Advisory Board of Assessors. She's already done some work tonight. I'm the liaison to the Conservation Commission. Planning Board is our stalwart Nancy Carter, with alternate being Jenny. And Carrie, you're the alternate for the Board of Assessors. Nancy is Howe Library. Jenny is the Bike Walk. Joanna's alternate. Finance Committee is Carrie. On the alternate, Hanover Improvement Society is Jenny. Trustcut Board is me, Carrie, and Alex. And Trustees of the Trust Fund is also Joanna. Sorry, I was confused because I messed up the assessors with the trust fund. So what we have not done is Sustainable Hanover or Sustainability Committee and the CIP Committee. So the Sustainability Committee, I've never been involved with that. I know that we traditionally have not had a select board representative attend that, partly because our town manager was heavily involved with that and reported back to us. The town manager at the time, excuse me. So is there any interest in anyone picking up Sustainable Hanover? I don't know how often they meet, when they meet. I think they meet in the morning, don't they?
Yeah, it's once a month.
8:30 Wednesday morning.
Do you go to those meetings?
I attend.
8:30?
Wednesday morning. In this room, or by Zoom if we have a quorum.
Okay. That would be really difficult for me to do.
So I can do that if I know that he's in the room.
Okay. That'd be great, Nancy.
I'll be his, right
Thank you.
there.
All right, and the CIP committee. So Alex, before we talk about, that is a committee which we're still devising. We talked about this last time, whenever it was.
Right, and that the CIP committee, this CIP committee is going to be more of an attachment in the select board, in the budget process, and there's going to be some staff working groups that will spend some time doing some sort of staff work too, and that maybe this will be sort of sandwiched a little bit, and this group would meet, set some goals or some guidance, go back, work on some stuff to bring back to this group. So yeah, no, that's all right.
We talked about this last time as well. How many people are we envisioning this committee to consist
We're
of?
gonna do a little memo for us. Remember, you're gonna craft, wasn't that?
I can, okay, okay.
You're
Well,
gonna,
I can do a verbal memo.
well, it's gonna be like, how many people, like, representing one entity,
Yeah.
and what is their statutory authority, and kind of how it all links together to the work that all the committees are doing and all the staff are to create this magical CIP.
Yes. So I can definitely actually do that. But I would suspect that we're going to be between 5 and 7 people. There'll be a planning board representative, a select board representative. You can imagine myself and Ellen both there, and then we've got a couple seats that could potentially have a few other stakeholders on it. Maybe there's a finance committee representative. Maybe there's a member of the public. I mean, we have a little bit of flexibility beyond the requirement that there has to be a planning board representative on it. That's the real requirement from the state. So I could, again, actually come back with a recommended membership, though I would also, does that change potentially? Maybe it does. Who wants to be on it?
Yeah. Well, I know that both Jenny and Carrie have expressed interest in being on the committee, and we talked about 1 versus 2 liaisons.
Well, last time we talked about 2. We actually didn't talk about 1, but I guess could be.
Well, if it's going to be a small group, we can't.
I
if it's going to be like 4 people on it,
you should write it up.
Okay.
I would like, not only would I like it written up in terms of the who's on it, but what is their charge?
I will do that for July 24th.
And with respect to the select board liaison, or representative, I should say, if we're having 1 or 2, I think it'd be dependent on how many we're talking about.
Yep. I think, if we're below 5-ish, then there's probably only 1 representative. If there's 7, if we have a few more stakeholders, it probably makes sense to have 2. That might be a good, that feels like a good general number, that range. But I can work something up, and even if it's a confusing, present an option or 2, or we can figure out something that we'll recommend.
That would be great.
Just to be clear, it's a public meeting.
Yes, the CIP committee would be a public meeting.
Right, and so
anyone could go.
That's right.
Anyone can go.
That's right.
2 does not represent a quorum, so.
It does not.
Yeah.
But it'll be a public meeting anyway, and we can notice it even if we wanted to as a meeting of the select board as well, so that anybody could go if you wanted to.
When do you think we're going to pull the committee together?
My guess.
July 25th.
Yeah, well, right.
Fine.
Midnight, July 24th.
All right, let's just think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, I would guess around October.
We want to do it right. It's a really important committee.
September, October.
It's going to take on a lot of tasks, and it's brand new.
Should be done.
Okay.
There's going to be a little bit of building the plane while flying it.
Let's move to appointment to the Conservation Commission. I've lost my spot.
What was the name? Mark Cunningham?
Yes.
Mark Cunningham.
Thank you.
Is it Matt? Oh,
Matt?
yeah, I think it's Matt.
We got to get his name correct.
It is Matt, yeah.
Sorry, thanks,
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you. Okay.
I'm Cunningham.
I thought that
Sounds
was
like
pretty
a
good at 10.
James Bond.
As we listen to the thunder out there.
All right, so I move that we appoint Mr. Cunningham, thank you, to the Conservation Commission. Is there a second?
So second.
All, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And who are we appointing to the
Advanced
Advanced?
Transit Board.
Item number 14 is appointment to the Advanced Transit Board.
I move that we appoint Rob Hausman because he doesn't have enough projects going on.
I'll second that. To the
The part
Advanced.
that he doesn't have enough projects, or the part where he gets appointed to the board?
Appointed if he so chooses to accept the mission.
Technically, you're nominating me,
And-
and then the full Advanced
Transit
Board.
would accept you. I nominate Rob Hausman as Hanover's representative to the Advanced Transit Board.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes unanimously. So we have, I'm totally out of, do you have where we are?
Donations.
I know, I just gotta get them right though. We have
There's a
donations
lot.
too. We have a lot of donations, and this is just wonderful. That's what I want to
Do
get
you have
away.
it?
No, I don't. Thank you. To the Hanover Police Department, the Hanover Fire Department, Parks and Rec, and the Etna Library. There's a whole series of wonderful. Can we accept them all at once, or do we have to separate them out?
I think you can move once to accept, and I would read them all out.
Okay. The donation, Carrie.
For motion, okay. Move to accept the $1,000 donations on behalf of the Hanover Fire Department and Hanover Police Department from the Barrett Family Fund with gratitude, and further to accept the $100 donations from Joseph and Miriam Pettifar, thank you, on behalf of the Hanover Police Department and Hanover Fire Department, and further to accept the $1,300 donation from White River Toyota and $1,500 donation from Dartmouth College on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department to support their 4th of July celebration, and further to accept the $100 donation from Jerry and Pat Balcom on behalf of the Etna Library. All with gratitude.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. These are just wonderful, and we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All call for a vote. All in favor? Aye. And that passed unanimously. So now we get to our item number 17, which is our consent agenda. There are 3 things in there. One is the approval of minutes. Did we just? Well, I'll just read it. May 1st, 2023, and June 5th, 2023.
I had some amendments to the minutes.
Yeah,
And
2
then,
seconds.
so maybe we have to move them out of the consent
Right.
agenda, though.
Yeah, I was
So-
going to get there. Approve the change to the town manager's employment contract and request for an abatement on 10 North Balch Street. So yes, Jen, I asked about this last time, Alex, and I apologize for not really remembering. When we have them, as Jenny just mentioned, there are probably going to be some amendments or revisions to the
Modifications, yeah.
minutes. Can we still leave it in the consent?
Yeah, I would take it out of the consent agenda. If you're gonna amend something that's in the consent agenda, I would do it separately.
Okay, so we'll pull that one out.
That's the 5th, right?
So yeah.
Yeah, just June 5th, and we need to talk about,
Move to it,
and let's talk about, so we'll get to that afterward.
Okay.
The May 1st is a problem, and I described this last time, we all weren't here last time, because I unfortunately was absent at that meeting. Joanna and Nancy were not, they were present. But, so the rest of the 3 of us on the board were not present. I'm not sure what to do with this. Anybody help me, please?
Jenny. Robert's Rules of Order, how do you do minutes? Those were present, supported, and.
I
just
thought
leave it
Alex
at
was listing this up, so I did not look this up, but I didn't look it up.
Yeah.
I just didn't, I thought it was being looked up.
Why don't we just, Nancy, did you read the minutes?
Yes, and I would suggest that we approve them because we want something on the record,
Right.
because we know that that meeting took place.
Joanna, did you get a chance to read them?
I did.
Did you both agree with them?
Yep.
I think they're fine.
I think we should accept the minutes as presented and without, okay.
I do too.
So are we taking, we can leave this in the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Although the other, last thing is the request for the abatement, I think we can leave in there. I'm just gonna recuse myself, because of
Family stuff.
family stuff, yeah. So, we're leaving, we have 2 things, no, we have 3 things in the consent agenda that we're gonna leave there, Carrie.
I might not understand the consent agenda. So, because I didn't think you could like selectively like recuse yourself from one thing in them and then vote on something
That's
else.
a darn good point, so let's take out that last one, thank you, I didn't think of that.
Wrong.
I think you have to pull out the minutes. So agenda item 17A has to be voted on separately.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask a brief discussion on 17B, which means that we're doing them through.
Okay, so I think we've
This is my fault for
eliminated-
making a small consent agenda.
I think we got rid of the consent agenda for tonight. So let's go to the minutes. Jenny, you have some issues with the minutes of June 5th that you'd like to bring up, I believe.
Yeah, I had, starting with, just the way it was written that, David Anderson was
Where are you?
in the minutes.
No, where? Where in the minutes?
What page of the minutes?
I don't know what page. I can find the page. I'll go in order. Yeah, I didn't write down the page, I just wrote down the points.
Okay, what was the point, Jenny?
Okay. The point when we talked about workforce housing,
Okay, workforce housing.
we talked about were there to be mean testing, that it should include housing and transportation costs.
Okay, just trying to figure out where you are. Anybody see that? Oh, no.
It might,
Is it 15?
yeah, it's a June 5th meeting. I'm just, not sure where the minutes are in the packet, because I scrolled down as we were going.
Yeah, you mean separate.
Oh, it's not in the packet
No,
too?
here you go.
Okay, thank you.
That's relevant.
I think it must be under section 13 when Mink Brook Community Forest was reported out.
Okay.
Is that where?
Yeah, when we're talking about the Mink Brook Community Forest.
So it would be on page 6 of 8
Okay,
at the top, where it
yes.
says Mink Brook Forest and Andrew from Twin Pines will come to make a presentation on the 26th. Whitcomb commented. Did somebody else comment there? Is that what you wanted to add?
Yeah, the comment was that if, I had said, Jenny Chamberlain, that, and I thought there was some agreement that if there were to be additional mean testing above and beyond the regulations for workforce housing, which there seem to be, that it should include transportation.
Okay.
And Joanna agreed that it should be such that we are focusing our housing among sewer, and which I took to meant that you agreed with transportation, sewer and water and other transportation stuff. So the idea was that housing and transportation costs are the two largest.
Okay, why don't we just make another bullet point?
I didn't find the page yet.
Yeah,
So
it's at the top of page 6. Why don't we just make another bullet point saying that you, Jenny,
Recommend we include
Yep.
transportation costs in the equation.
Yeah, I don't think we need to go through the whole.
yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Does that make
yeah,
sense?
that was the point.
Okay, and what was
Are
your
you
other,
making
I
those
think you had a
amendments?
couple more.
Oh,
No, I'm not, but we'll get it from the video.
yeah, it's just discussed that we discussed the term selectmen versus select board, but we agreed that we would only use select board and select board members. So I thought that was an important distinction.
Yeah, Jenny, I mean, that is something we've been doing forever, as Nancy just said.
Yeah, I
Sure,
just
we-
thought it should be in the minutes, that when the minutes are written that we discussed it, that we had a discussion about it.
Sure. I just want,
But I thought the important part of the discussion was that we agreed that we have been doing it and we will do it in the future.
okay.
Because I couldn't find it in any other minutes that are on the
Oh,
town
we've
website.
been doing this. It's been an
Since
informal
it was
process.
the first thing I did as a,
Mhm.
when I joined the
Yeah.
select
Yeah,
board
yeah.
8 years ago. It was
Yeah.
like, hey, can we do this? And we looked into charter and and then
Right.
we just said, who cares what the
Who
charter
cares what the
said?
state says?
We're just gonna be a select board, not a,
And we're still gonna come across, you have to remember, the state of New Hampshire is 1 billion years old, and it's an archaic term. We're still gonna come across it, and we will avoid using it in the future. Meaning, a lot of our documents, not in Hanover in particular, but the ones we get from the state usually use the word selectmen. I'm not arguing, I'm not saying no, but we're doing our best.
Yeah, I
It's a
could
good- it's a-
I could misunderstand the purpose of the minutes. But
Well,
to me, what was-
that's a good question, I'm glad you brought
What
that up.
was, to me, what was important was not that it was discussed, but that it was agreed upon, that this is our practice, that we're embracing this practice. Maybe,
Yeah,
since
no.
2016.
Yeah.
But definitely going forward.
Yeah.
And that to me was very important.
Sounds
And that's
great.
why I wanted it in the minutes, like reflected
So
there.
we need another bullet point somewhere, I don't know where.
Well, it's just like, it says it's discussed, and it could just say, and agreed upon.
Oh, where does it say that?
Like, it's not omitted from the minutes, it's just the conclusion was omitted.
Do you see where it is?
No, I'm sorry I didn't mark the page. Okay, we can search for it, Selectmen. Just driving your computer.
Okay, well, we can,
Here, it's at the bottom of page 2.
bottom of page 2, that early in the meeting?
Yeah, and then for David Anderson,
Wait, before you move off that one.
Bottom page 2, discussion, very bottom, just before the poll.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So, great, so discussion occurred, and it was agreed that, yeah, let's get, it was agreed that the term select board member and the designation of select board are,
Or the correct
as opposed
terms.
to board of selectmen. Okay, do you have that?
Yeah, but as Alex said,
We'll
the
get it from
recording will
video.
have it.
Yeah, okay, and Jenny, you had another one?
Oh, Dave Anderson?
David Anderson suggests that, I mean, we voted. I just wanted to be clear that we voted to approve him.
Oh,
And
right.
now we have to, you know, send a letter. Like, it's a little unclear.
Right,
So that's
Dave
at the
Anderson.
middle
Where
of
are
the
we?
page on page 3.
3 here.
But we took a vote, and it suggests that
Right.
it was just, you know, suggested that he was here. So I thought that should be clear.
Okay,
That's a really good one too, right?
okay,
And then we need that letter to appoint him. I don't know if that happened yet, but that
Thank
would
you.
be good.
okay,
It did.
so we have, you done?
He got it like
Jenny?
the next day, I think.
Carrie has
Oh,
one.
I mean, it doesn't matter so much because we gave the presentation for the walk bike plan, but it suggested that we were, you know, presenting on walk to school day, which we're presenting on walk, but that will be made clear by the next minutes, I think, so I think it's okay.
Okay, Carrie?
Okay, just bottom of page 5, you will see just before town reports, 851 Callahan moved and Callahan seconded. I don't think I both moved.
Oh,
and
yeah,
seconded,
yeah,
so I think Athos seconded, and that's further reflected at the bottom of
Okay.
page 8, where
Great.
the summary.
The summary.
Thank you.
That's quite a feat you accomplished. That kind of goes against Robert's rules, isn't it?
That's it for me.
Okay, are we done? All right, so I move we accept the minutes as amended. For a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
That was June 5th.
that was June 5th, thank you. Oh, did we accept May 1st?
No.
No, we didn't,
And,
we don't have a
and
motion.
I'll move that we accept the May 1st minutes as presented.
Nancy, can you second that?
Yes.
Would you
so
feel
second.
appropriate seconding that? I should have asked.
Right.
Any further discussion? We've kind of discussed this already.
Abstain.
Yeah.
Abstains.
Two
It's-
abstentions.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we were gonna look into whether
Fine,
we
why
could
don't-
like watch
I mean,
them and read
I'll
them
agree.
and vote, but I didn't hear from that and I didn't do that,
Yeah.
so I can't honestly vote for them.
No, that's
Right,
fine.
that's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I think we have a quorum. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Abstain?
With 2 abstentions.
And no opposed, correct?
Right.
I can do the math. Okay, that was difficult.
We're working through kinks. It's a big agenda.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is the approved change to the town manager's employment contract, which we've discussed before. Looking for the memo. It's a problem with having things on paper. I like having the paper, but then you just get lost. And the contract, basically what we're doing is a request from the town manager that we're considering is to change a small part in it, which is to move away from the merit-based compensation program.
Why does
Why do you
one say move
explain?
away? Because eventually we want to go, we
Okay.
want to move back to it, we just don't have one currently.
Thank you.
And so I didn't know that.
Inappropriate for that language to be.
Yeah, exactly,
Yes,
it should,
and-
right, we shouldn't offer it if we don't have it, but we should probably consider moving in that direction at some point for all staff.
Yes, thank you.
And my only comment and reason for wanting to pull it out of the consent agenda is that I think we should move toward it as expeditiously as possible.
Yeah.
And so I know you said for the balance of your contract, and could it be for the next year and to be revisited for the following year, just as a.
Yeah, yeah, we could do that, or we could just do, you know, we could revisit it again, either way, whatever you all want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion? We should have had a motion, I guess, before we, I move that we approve the change to the town manager's employment contract. As is written.
For the balance of the contract.
Yes, sorry, I was just reading what it's written there. I assumed that was-
And I'll second it, and if you wanna amend it, I mean, we can talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Now that there's a second.
Yeah. So, doggone it, can't find it.
We should adjust the amendment.
So Alex, are you comfortable if we just did it as a 1 year?
Yeah, I am. I mean, I would say that there's a caveat, which I put in the memo, that I'm not convinced tying merit-based there's different ways to approach merit-based pay for employees, and some tie it to, you know, a performance review, and some, so like one of the things that we're doing this year, which is something I've not done before, but is we're offering a merit-based pool of money that employees who want to access that money would basically apply for, and it's to encourage sort of more self-initiated like programming and planning among employees. And there's some pros and cons to either way, so I just wouldn't say that I'm committed at the outset organization-wide of tying an annual performance review to the only compensation an employee gets, so I would give that caveat, but I'm open to doing that. I mean, I've gotten, some towns do one, some do both, some do, well, not many do neither. So I just wouldn't want to implicitly be endorsing something before we finish our staffing study, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we.
Well, this would just be 1 year COLA and to be revisited obviously for the following year.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking this through. I mean, I think, what are you most comfortable with, Alex? I think anything is reasonable here.
Yeah, and we can also, I mean, just the same way we're amending this, we can come back and amend it either whether we say now or not.
That's true.
Okay. So I'm certainly open to that, if that helps. Just looking for some language there.
Just leave that, yeah, okay, fine. So we have a motion, we have a second. We've discussed at length. Call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. So this is the request for an abatement. This was a situation, we do get these situations where a water bill is abnormal. And this one, I think our DPW really did a lot of due diligence, replaced the meter, and found that it was most likely quite at its end of life and not functioning properly. As I said, I'm going to recuse myself, though, abstain, that is to say. And is there a motion?
Move to approve an abatement in the amount of $5,656 for property located at 10 North Balch. Please see attached memo to fix the small but important. Okay, never mind. Skip that last sentence. That's it.
I will, I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Great. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
With one abstention.
Abstain, me.
Opposed.
So 4-0-1. Wow. Town manager report. I got everything, didn't I?
Yeah. I just don't want to forget about the other business item that we talked about too.
Why don't we, do you want to do that?
first?
We're going to
Yeah.
skip the reports and go to other business. Thank you, Alex. We have, we got an email today that Alex updated. Alex and I.
Paper if people want it.
Can I have a piece of paper?
Sure. That's not and if anybody in the public
in
wants.
reviewing the agenda, we thought it would be oh, these are 3 pieces of paper.
Yeah, I think there are 3 pages.
So there are 2 things going on here. One is to, I'd like to talk about the second one first, if we can, Alex. The reclassifying the finance director's position to the administrative services director.
Sure, yeah.
So, for those a little bit newer to the situation, we used to have very recently, we had a combined financial director and administrative services director who oversaw a lot of the employees, the town employees who function mostly in this building, mostly. The folks that the public-facing folks downstairs, and a lot of the other folks as well, and that combination of roles worked well. What is being proposed is to return to that role. The reason we split the roles up in the past, relatively recently now, because the person retired, that would be Betsy, retired, and we thought it would be a lot easier to recruit into two separate, or basically we desperately needed a finance director, and it'd be a lot easier to recruit into that position without the additional requirement to be the administrative services director. So this is a proposal to go back to the situation that we were in. I'm trying to remember, it was
a year ago,
2021, probably.
No, you changed it when you got here.
Yeah, there was two. There was one change when Betsy left.
Yeah.
And then there was another.
Regardless, the point is it was relatively recently.
Yeah.
Alex, do you want to take us through this a little bit more?
Yeah, Betsy's filled multiple roles here, and partially as the finance director, also as the elected town clerk, and so she oversaw a couple different functions that never quite got totally kind of pulled apart. We didn't have supervisories set up really for our clerk tax collector staff, and what has come up from some of the conversations that we've been having with our staff in all of our department, our R&R, our recruitment and retention meetings, is creating. So we have a lot of things changing from a finance and HR policy standpoint right now, especially right now at the end of the year. But going forward, we're imagining a couple things. One is to kind of rebuild the admin services department, and that may also grow from what we have proposed here. So this is kind of recreating what existed, but also adding human resources within that. And the goal is to create an administration department that's pretty common. It varies in towns of different sizes, but certainly in nonprofits and many companies as well, that there's a sort of administration department that oversees the internal functionings of the organization. And one of the things that I've certainly identified, and which should be relatively obvious, is the span of control right now between department heads and town manager is really beyond, you want like 3 to 5, maybe 7 in the worst case scenario. We have 12 or 13 to 1. And so that's the direct reports, and we want to build a little bit more of a tiering within that structure. That's also something that we're looking at doing within some of our departments as well, is creating where possible, creating a more senior junior role so that we can create a sort of advancement track for employees, which is a little different than how things are set up currently. So this starts to move us in that direction, and the reason why we're talking about it now, the main reason why, there's a couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons why is that we put this new FTE that we had listed as in the clerk's office in the budget, which was approved this year. And when we met with staff and officials, so we have these monthly election official meetings where we meet with our election officials as well as the staff that touched that. And as we went back and forth on the job description and the responsibilities, what we sort of landed on was something that moved a little bit more in this direction. That triggered an additional conversation. And basically, what we realized is, and I have a table of organization on the back of the first page to just make it a little simpler. So we have Director of Administrative Services, and then we have our HR Director, who will remain our HR Director, and her responsibilities and role will be basically identical to what it is today. There'll just be some reporting that will go to the Administrative Services Director, and some that comes to me rather than only coming to me. And then the new position, which is the second bubble down, which is the senior assistant clerk, that person will oversee the two staff in the front lobby, which is basically, they are both tax collector and clerk employees. And those are the two staff that Betsy used to also oversee. And then the finance department is overseen also by the administrative services director, who is the finance director, and that's the finance coordinator and the finance manager. So these two things are pretty tied together. And all the staff that are involved here are department heads, Ellen and Katie, both very open, interested, enthusiastic about this organization. And we're pretty excited about this is going to open up some opportunities as we go forward. And I think that, as I mentioned at the end of the memo, as we continue to talk about this, this might change again, by next year, but we are making a handful of smaller adjustments that don't have any or major, and neither of these have budget impacts. We are making some adjustments sort of as we go through the study for things that are a little bit more time sensitive. So there's probably going to be a couple other of these that are coming on the radar in the next couple months.
Okay. And I asked you this question, or my one concern, not my one concern, but one, are we diminishing the role of the human resources director by not having that person report to you? I understand the goal. I think it's a laudable goal, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, their job is going to be basically identical, other than just having an additional person. And if you think about it, a lot of towns our size, I mean, it's very unusual for a town with this many departments to not have a deputy manager or assistant manager, or somebody that has certain departments report to them and certain departments report to the other town manager. It doesn't diminish any of the departments. So let's say, Lebanon, I think, has 3 or 4, I think 3 deputy city managers, a department that reports to a deputy manager, a department head. So if a police chief reports to one, that doesn't change their they're still a department head the same way everybody else is a department head. You're just creating multiple senior managers, but there's a hierarchy there because you just don't want a whole bunch of, you have one CEO, if that makes sense. But no, it doesn't diminish that position at all. And again, staff that are involved in this are 2 department heads that work here currently, other than the vacant position, are very enthusiastic and think this will be a good change as well.
Okay. And the other job classification change, it regards the posting or the classifying of the FTE that was approved at town meeting, which is the town clerk. Could you just explain that in a couple of sentences?
So this is basically this, we've struggled for some years in how we set up our clerk position. Cities can appoint a clerk in town, and they don't necessarily have to be a resident. Towns, they have to be elected and they have to be a resident. There's 1 or 2 other mechanisms where you can have a joint tax collector, anyway. But so we have our town clerk who oversees all the clerk operations, and that includes elections, municipal agent, things like that. All the motor vehicle registrations is under the municipal agent. This position would be a senior staff position, so they would supervise the 2 staff. One is a tax collector assistant town clerk, the other is the deputy tax collector and associate town clerk. This person would supervise those 2 staff and would report on town clerk functions to the town clerk, and otherwise would report to the administrative services director. And so that's not uncommon to have multiple reporting routes. It's unfortunately just the nature of the beast in municipal government, where you have different supervisory bodies. This is the position that was approved at town meeting. The job description is attached. This was worked out with all the staff that are involved, making sure that this job description represents our best estimate of what this person is going to work on. It is written a little broad, and part of the idea is that based on who we get interviewing in the process, that one of the things that we have to do more and more staffing wise is find good people and bring them in, and if they don't have exactly the right training or licensing, we may have to pay for that for them or help them get that training or move a few things around, but really finding good people and bringing them in. And so there's a bunch of functions in here. Some of the management and logistics with select board meetings, for example, grants, there's a few things that it totally depends on who applies and who we get, where some things might move around. But it's largely focused on records retention, right to know, election support, municipal agent support, and governing and legislative body support.
So what do we need for a motion, and can we take them together?
So I did write that.
Can we do one? I mean,
Fine, let's do, yes.
so in terms of this Director of Administrative Services, I get it. But I think philosophically, how, as a board, how do we feel about creating more layers in our government and your paid staff? I mean, it's kind of feeling like an assistant town manager, and it feels like that's okay. Let's talk about an assistant town manager if that's what you're looking for. If what you're doing is trying to consolidate your direct reports, that's fine too. A year ago we got rid of this position and now we're bringing it back, and but things change and that's cool. But it would be good to know how you're thinking. You're a year into the job, and where are we going?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main reason that this works is because both of these together make sense. And so if we weren't hiring the senior assistant clerk deputy director position, that would make this a little bit different potentially. But bringing this person under that position, this just makes sense to organize these. That person, if we didn't do this, what we would end up doing is be creating instead of subtracting a couple, we'd be adding one to the direct reporting, right? And so if we,
okay, I get it.
So if this person were to be added as a department head, the senior assistant clerk, right now we've added one more department head, one more direct report, and we still have sort of all these very small, two-person siloed internal administration departments. And so the idea is, especially for some of these smaller departments, we have 1 and 2 person departments and we have 40 and 50 person departments here. And the goal would be to create some general uniformity there.
So does that mean that some of the other very small departments, and I'm thinking of assessing and computing, or do you envision, a future that incorporates them? And maybe this is something, since we're starting to talk about personnel, we should do in a non-public.
Exactly, yeah, I would say until we get a little further with the discussion among staff, but I would say as a general goal, figuring out ways to create a more seamless integrations between departments. There's some silos that we have, like breaking some of those things down a little bit is something that has come up in a lot of these conversations. Okay. And I will definitely keep you all updated as we go through those conversations.
I mean, the bottom line with this is it worked well in the past, and I don't see a reason not to return to it.
Right.
Okay, I got my question answered, thank you.
Well, why don't we get a motion on the table, then we can further discuss it.
Sorry.
I'm not sure, what do you want here? What do you want for a motion?
So, let's see, for the assistant clerk, so for that one I have established the position of full-time senior assistant clerk / deputy director of administrative services at grade 19 as presented.
So that's one motion, then we have another one for the other one? Okay. I'll move that as you just verbalized. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carrie. I think this one's pretty straightforward. And I don't have any further issues. We discussed it at town meeting. That's what we said we were going to do. Any discussion on that? Let's call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So that passes unanimously. And then I don't know how you want to write the finance. Go ahead.
So we could to reclassify the director of finance as director of administrative services as presented.
Okay.
And that's full-time position, so I'll read that.
So wait, implicit in there, oh, I see. In the chart you've got.
And really, I should actually say retitle, not reclassify. So to retitle finance, the director of finance as director of administrative services.
So this is dependent as written.
And that
and
that grade is staying at what it is.
It's dependent upon the finance director.
These are together, really.
Being qualified and.
Say that again?
I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is, well, for the moment, this is what we're gonna do. Okay, fine. I'm just trying to think about the future.
Alex, if I'm understanding you correctly, the third box, the head of the third box is now gonna kind of be the head of all three of these boxes.
Yeah.
But then all three of these boxes will have one person they can talk to.
Yeah, I
So
think
they
that's
will
basically.
facilitate communication
That's right.
theoretically between them,
Between all of
and
them.
then we'll cut down on the number of people who have to talk to you.
I wouldn't say the last part exactly like that, but yes.
But yeah, I mean, well, the direct reports, like
Right.
where
So-
you're in more constant communication.
That was a good clarification. So what was that?
So to retitle
Retitle the finance
the
director.
director of finance as director of administrative services and staying at grade 25
Okay.
as presented.
I'll move that. Is there a second?
Alex, I have one more question. Do they need to also have like a subtitle? Like, are they going to still be a finance director? Or
That was kind of
would
my
be
question as
confusing?
well.
Like, do they have to have sort of two titles? Which I know some people do, and they do, whatever.
that's
In
exactly
academia,
what-
everyone's like a dean and something else.
Keep adding on.
Jenny, you're saying exactly what I was trying to
Yeah,
come up with.
it would be probably slightly cleaner, even though it's a little more words, just to make it clear that this person is also in charge of the
Just in
finance
terms of
department.
like job descriptions too, like you'll
Yeah.
have the both.
I mean, I don't think we had it that way in the past, but.
I think we did.
Did you? Okay. I mean, I'm fine either. I don't think it makes a huge difference either way. If one of them feels better, I think we
That
can-
feels better. That's what I was trying to
Okay.
say a few minutes ago but it's getting to be late and I couldn't come up with the words. I think we should do that.
So
I'm gonna revise
to retitle, go ahead.
I'm gonna revise my motion to say that, I know it's already been seconded, but, we'll retitle it to what?
So
Administrative
retitle the director of finance to the director of administrative services / director of finance.
Yes.
Staying at grade 25 as presented.
Carrie, you had seconded that. Is that okay with you?
It's fine. What is the job occupant want to be called? I mean, that's
That's a good
I'm
point
fine with
too.
it. I'm fine with
Great.
it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that was other business. Is there any other business? I love saying that.
Are all of these people going into executive
No,
session?
nobody is.
Okay, so we should let them know, because I think
What?
they're probably waiting.
Nobody's waiting for a closed session.
We are.
They are.
So
Okay.
other business.
Anyway,
Yeah. Rob is. Rob's the only one.
Are we doing reports?
Yeah, we're about to get there.
Okay.
1 second, Jenny.
So,
okay,
Let's do town manager report, please.
Okay.
we ready to go.
Do you guys want to chat for once? Are you two gonna chat? Or okay.
Did we call for other business previously?
I did, and
we
I
not
ignored what you were, I heard you say something, but I didn't acknowledge it. Is there any other business?
I'm not sure when the right place is to bring stuff up, so stop me if this is not the right time. We're in Alex's podcast and in our last meeting, he brought up the fatality of the pedestrian who was hit by a bicyclist. I want to thank you for bringing it up and how serious that issue was. And I listened to the podcast after the meeting, and I was like, I was thinking about that, and it strikes me that that happened on the sidewalk by Kendall, and then we shifted that discussion to talk about like downtown, but I think we really need to talk about these issues around Kendall, and it made me concerned that we have a very similar condition around the reservoir roundabout, where the bike path still goes up onto the roundabout if you follow the lines on the road. And it strikes me that we're resurfacing a bit of Lime Road, and I haven't seen any plans to address some of the other concerns that we have about vulnerable road unit users. So I wanted to bring that up. So I'd like to see that, because part of the idea of like the complete streets is like, oh, we were going to spend all this money resurfacing the road. We should make sure we do it so that it's, you know, as safe as possible and accommodates all road users. It's sort of like the backbone of our complete streets policy. So when we resurface Lime Road, it seems important to think about how we're going to do that in a way that better serves pedestrians and bicyclists and other vulnerable road users. Just because it is, it's just like a high-use area where there's been a lot of concerns raised. Similarly, we're tearing up Summer Street, and then we'll be rebuilding Summer Street, and this has been, you know, identified by like Vicki Smith as a place that's very much in need of, you know, better accommodation for people walking and biking, and it's been brought up in our committee a bunch of times. And again, I just want to make sure that if we're going to spend all this money on the road, that we make sure our investments are also serving all of the users of the road. And that's a really interesting road because it's small, it's on our, you know, it's part of our bike walk network. It's been up from the last plan, still is. And it can, you know, it goes right to our high school, and it goes right to the athletic facilities at Dartmouth. So it's a high-use corridor for people just moving around in sort of, as Patrick was saying, these little trips. So I just wanted to make sure that that's, you know, I'm not the only one seeing this. And I know like college got dropped from the work, but it also made me wonder if we could stripe or demonstrate what we intended to do with College Street, because this has now gotten pushed 4 years. It was going to be done around the green. All of this stuff was going to be done, and then it got shifted to just College to be done with the Dartmouth Hall construction, and it's not done. It's not going to be done this time, but there might be a way to like indicate what we're going to do, even if we don't redo the entire street.
Can this
But
stuff
those are
go to
two
the
things.
committee, Jenny? The safety committee? I mean, it's 11, and we still have executive session.
I'm not sure when that's meeting, but that could. But the Summer Street's getting torn up now. So the Summer Street and Lime Road are slated to be resurfaced this summer. So that's all. I just wanted to make sure.
Is this the same as the questions you emailed about? Or just,
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, we're talking about that on Wednesday.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, again, they might not be the other
No,
business.
so that's what I was just saying, that
Yeah.
those seem like public safety issues that we should bring.
Well, they're complete streets issues, so
Yeah.
they're like directly under the purview of the select board.
Okay.
Because we passed that policy a long time ago, and we're responsible for the streets. So.
Town manager report.
Sure.
Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Andrew.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks. This past month, we had one employee leave employment and 6 start, including 2 seasonal, 1 transfer from permanent to from temporary to permanent, and 3 new hires. So congratulate Nolan, Lena, and Natalie at Parks and Rec, Anthony at Parking, Trevor at DPW, and Jeff at Police. We're in month 2 of our retention and recruitment study. So this month's topic was recruitment and advertising. So again, we had really incredible participation from staff. We discussed a pretty wide range of issues in our department meetings, and our steering committee meeting is this week, which is each representative from each department. So we're talking about what makes Hanover stand out in a good or bad way as an employer, and making sure that when we ask MRI to do the market data collection that they will be doing shortly, that we are asking for the right titles, positions, job responsibilities, and competitive employers. So one of the things that has come up this year, or in these discussions, is, for example, if there's a handful of positions that we have that really don't compete with other municipal governments, but compete with private sector employers, like a lot of the positions at Parks and Rec, and a lot of the positions at Public Works. So we're going to be trying to bring that in as well. I'm going to skip through some stuff here.
It's all in the packet.
Yeah, there's a lot in the packet. I'll kind of breeze over the FY24 staff compensation changes. A bunch of these things, these are obviously all in the budget that we approved, the town meeting approved. Like going from an unpaid to a paid family leave program, critical staffing shortage, referral bonuses, merit-based, things like that. And so a lot of that came from feedback from staff that we are implementing this year. We also have talked about summer hours, and I included a list of each department and each division within each department. So this was hard because there was just no way to do this uniformly across the organization. Different departments have such different schedules and needs. Even within Town Hall, which has a bunch of different departments, there was definitely not everybody was on the same page about what they wanted to do. So we chose the option that was sort of best for the most number of people. So for Town Hall, which is the main one I wanted to just make sure to mention tonight, is that beginning next week through the end of August, basically through Labor Day, Town Hall will be open a half hour earlier each day. So 8 a.m. to 4:30 instead of 8:30 to 4:30. So 8 to 4:30 Monday through Thursday. And then Friday, it will be open from 8 to 1 p.m. And so the building will close at 1 p.m. on Friday. There may still be a couple staff hanging around, but folks should be aware of that, that if they do need to come in and do business, not to leave that for Friday afternoon. This is one of a handful of different schedules. This is one of the other schedules was a 4-day week. One of the other schedules was one late night. And each has kind of different pros and cons. And again, this was the best one for the most number of staff. It's been very well received by most staff who are, and I think it will be even better once we do it and people get to the feeling of the leaving early on Friday. That will be very nice. A bunch of staff in other departments, you can see the whole schedule in the packet. And we kind of did our best. And the goal here is to give everybody who works here regular access to not being scheduled for work during the work week for at least a half a day per week. So if they want to go to the doctor or go to the bank or go do other things only open during the day, that at least over the summer they don't have to take off from work to go do something like that. And so it's meant to relieve a little bit of the pressure that has kind of built up over the last few years. Downtown Hanover, those meetings are continuing once a month. Many people have noticed, and because of all the rain, the grass is really coming in quite nicely, actually, much better than we were expecting in front of Town Hall. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll start to get some tables out there. The ground's still a little bit soft.
Where are the tables going to be?
There's going to be tables, there's going to be hedges right around the building. They'll be a lot less deep than the ones that were there, and the tables will be just kind of beyond that. So it'll just be on the grassy area. And then
when you say table, I'm talking like picnic tables?
There will be some bistro tables. There's going to be a few different styles of tables. There'll be some like bistro tables, though they're kind of like the high top kind of things. Yeah. There'll be one or two that are ADA accessible, so they're kind of shaped a little bit differently. And then we may try some Adirondack chair type things. And the goal is actually to do a few different things to see what people use the most and what they like. And we'll be doing some surveys of people throughout the summer to see what people like and don't like. I know I've gotten a bunch of positive feedback. As soon as the hedges came out, I got all these emails from people. And then the Valley News article, I think, was another one where people noticed it from there and said, hey, this is really great.
Yeah, the hedges retired.
Yes, right. Yes. So I think that's good.
Like me.
And then I have a short budget finance update from Ellen as well, just some of the things. We had sort of circled back on a couple budget issues, so I just wanted to make sure to provide an update there, which has a lot to do with closing out not only last year's audit, but the prior year's audit. And she is keeping the finance committee updated on those pieces as well. Let's see, on the last kind of updates, mentioned some really great conversations with some of the incoming leadership at Dartmouth College, which we're really all very excited about. We are probably going to host a 91A workshop at some point for boards, committees, and so 91A is the right to know about meetings and records. We are trying to have some meetings with Verizon and AT&T to start to finally address some of the cell phone coverage issues in town. So there's been some conversations about that, but we're making a little bit of a bigger push there. Traffic safety working group, the staff are meeting this week. Volunteering, we're looking at doing some changes and additional support, but also organizing some of the policies about how different committees have their bylaws, how we solicit volunteers, how many committees we have. We're just having a conversation about volunteering. The rules of the Lebanon landfill are also changing, which is on our website. So if you use a landfill at all to drop stuff off, make sure to go to hanovernh.org and look at some of the changes there. And then 2 other sort of professional development updates just on my end. One is that I've signed up for this High Performance Leadership Academy through ICMA, which starts in a month. And I'll be working with a dozen or 2 other local government folks from across the country. They usually have about a couple hundred people, it sounds like, per cohort, and they break them into like 15-person groups. I'm also encouraging, we have a discount for the program, so any other department heads or staff who want to do that, and it's sort of on managing change, leadership development, things of that nature. And then I had a really nice get-together with some folks at the annual Municipal Management Conference last week in North Conway as well, which was fun to see the cog rail on Washington.
Nice picture.
Which was pretty interesting, and a cool history. And we had a really great session that was hosted by Primex. That was sort of a personality profiling program that I'm going to try and bring here for our department heads. So Rob, get ready for that.
Bring it on.
And then of course a big portion of the conference was about retention and recruitment issues, which is just now every conference that's municipal government related, like half of it is about staffing. And so that's.
Thank you.
Are they talking 5G with the AT&T, or you don't know?
No, I'm just trying to get 4G here in Hanover. I mean,
we just need.
We'll get 3. I'll take 3G.
I mean, 3G's gone.
They are trying to push 3G out, but yeah, this is really for coverage issues, not for speed issues. At least for now, is that?
Oh yeah, my understanding was once you switch to 5G, the ability to disperse coverage is much easier because you can basically put it in every lamppost. It's like a web rather than a big tower. So it's not like you rely on a big tower and then it actually.
It depends on how much they're willing to build it out. Yeah. Because the antenna, the distance is very short for each antenna. So if they're going to build out the whole thing, then yes.
Because Dartmouth was talking about it too.
Jenny, why don't we talk about this some other time?
Take it out.
We can do that.
Select board reports. Joanna.
Nothing to report.
We had a
I'm sorry.
Trescott committee meeting. Trescott. What is the name of that? Company. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm on the board. Alex is on the board. Carrie's on the board. It was a really good meeting. We reorganized. The most exciting thing that came out of it is we committed to have our next meeting up at the land, which is going to be in September. Hopefully, it'll be a nice busy day, a nice sunny day. Nancy.
Nothing to report.
Carrie.
There was a Hanover Finance Committee on the 19th. I did not attend, so nothing to report.
Jay.
We had an Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission annual meeting, and it was extra exciting because they've actually won a ton of grants. I'm very excited that Hanover is working with them now. But they won a ton of grants, a lot of street improvements going in Lebanon, and also a ton of brownfield mitigation, the most they've ever won before. So that was exciting to hear about. And then the e-bike lending library is going to Dartmouth for the first time tomorrow. So that's very exciting, and we're partnering with Dartmouth Bikes, and they're going to be coming too. So we partnered with them before, but not with the e-bike lending library. So this is the first time we'll be like Sustainable Hanover, Hanover Bike Walk, and Dartmouth Bikes, and the Upper Valley e-bike lending library, which is sponsored by Vital Communities and the Kilton Library.
That's exciting.
I forgot one thing.
We can't go back.
It's just an announcement. It wasn't a report. It's a future. Tomorrow at 7:30 a.m. we'll be meeting in this office, the trustees of trust funds. So if anyone wants to come.
Okay,
we can grab a cot if you just want to stay.
It's nice and cool in here. Let's. skip any other committee report, because we just heard that from Joanna. There has been a request for a non-public session to discuss items pursuant to RSA 91A, 3A, C, E, and L.
Joanna Whitcomb, what am I supposed to say? I agree?
Yes.
Yes. Just say yes. Altus Rossi, yes.
Nancy Carter, yes.
Karen Callahan, yes.
Jenny Chamberlain, yes?
Thank you, everyone. We're in non-public session. Can we just take a 2-second break so I can